I become a Mecha. I can evolve infinitely. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26 Secondary Mutation. Under the dark night sky, two giant shadows, one fast and one slow, are approaching each other. Xingshan's shoulder-mounted cannon has been slightly upgraded during the last reorganization, allowing Xingshan to maintain a relatively stable aiming direction while moving. Cannon locked. Boom boom boom. One shell after another was pushed into the hot barrel and fired from the muzzle under intense high temperature. A steady stream of artillery fire passed by the high-speed moving Blue Eagle. This running Mecha was not afraid of any damage or pain. In less than 10 seconds, the distance between the two sides was within reach. Roar. Just as Xingshan was about to raise his wrist blade to stab Blue Eagle's head, a sound of metal breaking suddenly came from the opponent's hand. Beiying saw with his own eyes that a huge bone claw broke through Blue Eagle's hand armor. The 5 macro fuel booster holes on Blue Eagle's wrist were fully powered at this moment, allowing Blue Eagle's attack to be one step faster than Xingshan. Bang. Warning. 41% of the head armor is damaged. This claw directly tore off 1/3 of Crossing Shine's head and almost made Beiying lose Crossing Shine's visual signal. Crossing Shine was knocked back several steps before he finished his attack. Before Beiying could readjust his posture, Blue Eagle's other rocket-powered jet punch smashed down from Crossing Shine's head. The sharp wrist blade of the slasher barely blocked the attack. Beiying had no chance to use Harden to launch an attack. Blue Eagle's movements were always one step faster than him. But Blue Eagle still didn't intend to give Beiying a chance to breathe. Blue Eagle once again waved his bone claws and grabbed Crossing Shine's abdomen directly. Harden. Crossing Shine, who was attacked, was once again shocked and retreated a few steps, and Blue Eagle's bone claws were directly bounced off by the huge reaction force. Although Beiying temporarily withstood this attack with local Harden, Blue Eagle's sharp claws with rocket jet acceleration still made Beiying's abdomen numb. On the other side, Cobra had loaded the last can of spare bullets. Even though his energy rifle could knock the monster mecha out of action with one shot, it couldn't stand up to the opponent's large numbers. Those newly landed monster mechas would even pick up their half-lives on the ground as shields to block the Cobra's shooting. The situation of the Scorpion was slightly better than the other two mechas. Although the chemical missile reserves were almost exhausted, the Scorpion's close combat was even more powerful. Roar. When a monster mecha jumped high and wanted to give the Scorpion a fatal blow from above, a giant steel fist directly knocked it to the ground. Facing the second generation mechas that were 10 meters shorter than itself on average, the Scorpion stood firm like a tall giant warrior. All the artillery fire from the monster mechas was just a scratch for the Scorpion. Before the monster mecha that fell to the ground could get up, half of the broken Scorpion tail directly penetrated its chest and grabbed it in front of the Scorpion like a doll. The next second, the Scorpion swung his huge fist and completely deformed the entire monster mecha. Die. The Scorpion raised his arms and smashed the monster mecha that was still struggling to death. Bang. After a loud bang, the lower body of the monster mecha was completely shattered, and the upper body was twisted like a flattened can. Yuzio felt that, if he had a body now, he would definitely be in a high fever state. Controlling two mechas at the same time made him feel like he was participating in a 100-meter sprint. Although he had become a machine soul that could split consciousness and was tireless, the amount of data that exceeded his computing limit still made Yuzio a little overwhelmed. Until this moment, he finally found a chance to support Beiying. Boom boom boom. 4 chemical missiles flew out from the Scorpion's shoulder and locked onto the agile Blue Eagle. The next second purple flames exploded on Blue Eagle's back, hands and legs. Blue Eagle, which had already jumped into the air, was hit hard. Now, Beiying directly controlled Crossing Shine to rush in front of Laniying, who had not yet stood firm, and swung the wrist blade of the killer. A 3-meter deep wound appeared on Laniying's chest. The mixed sound of the blade cutting through metal parts and broken pieces of flesh made Beiying unforgettable. Roar. However, before Beiying could swing the next blow. Lanai pounced forward and hugged Crossing Shan directly. Then, Beiyang heard the sound of the supporting column in Crossing Shan's body breaking. The injured Lanai knew that he had lost his agility advantage and wanted to directly crush Crossing Shan into a ball of metal fragments. However, Beiyang still underestimated Lanai. Cracks appeared on Lanai's shoulders and chest until they were completely connected into a line. Lanai's broken head flew out on the spot, and instead, it was replaced by a mutant shark head that was 10 meters high. On this disgusting head, Beiyang did not find anything that looked like eyes or other organs. The entire head was just a huge mouth of the abyss. Roar. This time, Blue Eagle's roar had completely turned into a roar that resounded through the heavens and the earth. The hoarse but loud roar was like a call from hell. At this moment, Beiyang saw clearly the finely arranged fangs in the huge mouth, and the countless flesh buds wriggling between the gums. The next second, the huge mouth bit straight at Crossing Shan. Snap. Countless fangs were deeply embedded in Crossing Shan's armor, and the huge mouth that tried to close almost crushed the entire Crossing Shan. The neural synchronization protection has been activated, which means that the system has determined that the pain this time is lethal. The hardening skill covering the whole body failed to completely block Blue Eagle's bite, and Crossing Shan's current situation has only changed from being on the verge of being scrapped to being seriously injured. But for Beiyang, this is enough. In the cockpit, there were electric sparks and red holographic warnings spraying everywhere. Fire. With Beiyang's order, the two cannons squeezed in the huge mouth instantly lifted the power limit, and all the ammunition pressed in the ammunition chain was poured out. The exploding flames continued to expand in the giant mouth of the Blue Eagle, and the high temperature that was enough to boil the air instantly burned all the squirming flesh buds. Boom. The explosions sounded one after another, drowning out the Blue Eagle's heart-wrenching roar. Countless flying pieces of meat and steaming mucus exploded like fireworks, falling into the sea like raindrops, splashing countless water. Crossing Shan, who broke free from his restraints, raised the Slayer's wrist blade amid the roar of the white shadow and stabbed straight at the extinguished power reactor of the Blue Eagle. Amid the pleasant sound of the knife, the Slayer's giant blade pierced through the body of the Blue Eagle. The white shadow's arm suddenly exerted force upwards, and the sharp giant blade directly split the Blue Eagle in two. Chapter 27 Newbie Gift Pack. As the Scorpion retracted its tail into the spine under the armor, all the monster mechas were knocked down. The damage to the Cobra's armor had reached 89%. All its ammunition had been used up, and even the barrel of its energy rifle was close to melting due to overheating. The Scorpion was in a slightly better situation. With its reinforced heavy armor, the Scorpion's wear and tear could only be considered minor injuries, but it also had no chemical missiles left. Fortunately, it still had a thermal cannon directly connected to the power reactor that could be used for medium and short range attacks. Crossing Shan's situation was the worst among the three mechas. His full body armor was almost completely broken, and his shoulder-mounted cannon was directly scrapped in the explosion just now. Except for the wrist blade and fist of the killer, he had lost all other means of attack. Is it over? Yuzao felt that he was almost a little unconscious. The long-term and high-intensity dual mecha combat almost caused his computing memory to explode. Once this happened, he would lose control of the mecha in a short time. He had reached his limit. If it weren't for the two third-generation mechas with overwhelming performance, Yuzao couldn't imagine what Crossing Shan would be like. Red Hurricane is not here. We must rush back to the black sky now. Beiyang's words woke Yuzao up. There is only one specialized second-generation mecha raider in the black sky. If the monster mecha attacks the base, the tireless and painless monster mecha will crush the raider in all directions. Boom. A loud earth-shaking sound broke the two people's hope of escaping from here. Yuzao could feel the ground under his feet shaking, and even the mountains in the distance were shaking. The sea surface, which had just returned to calm, became restless again, and a huge black shadow began to gradually emerge from the water, like a black hole that was growing infinitely. Unknown energy fluctuations detected. Energy level 5. The moment the system prompt popped up, Yuzao's heart almost sank to the bottom. Level 5 means that this unknown giant beast is enough to fight against a mecha army. At this moment, Yuzao didn't even feel fear and uneasiness. facing an enemy that he could not defeat at all. His heart was unexpectedly calm. Was it because he had died once, or because the fearless girl influenced him? Crossing Cheyenne. Beiyang suddenly spoke. Yuzhao did not have the extra computing power to create another holographic image to interact with Beiyang, but Beiyang did not care about it. Thank you for saving me last time. Yuzhao was somewhat amused. Although it was a pleasant surprise that Beiyang would thank him, now was obviously not the right time to thank him. Are you afraid that if you don't thank me again, you will not have another chance, right? I said that even if I die, I will die in the Mecha. These words came out of Beiyang's mouth so naturally. Then why don't you ask the Mecha if it wants to die? Beiyang opened her eyes wide. She did not expect Crossing Cheyenne to give such an answer. Before the two arrived at the silent cemetery, Yuzhao had purchased the so-called insurance in the system mall, the Newcomer gift package. In fact, the Newcomer gift package has always been in the first column under the promotion category of the Machine Soul Mall. But when Yuzhao first got the system, he had no time to look at the Machine Soul category. He was concerned about the parts under the body category. Yuzhao also didn't understand why this system was set up like the Krypton Guild mobile games he played in his previous life, and there were even limited time discounts and weekly promotions. The most important thing is that this mall doesn't have a recharge button yet, and I don't know what kind of consumption these promotions and discounts are stimulating. However, in terms of cost effectiveness and content, this Newcomer gift package is a well-deserved conscience. Product name, Newcomer gift package. Product description, a gift package specially customized for new mobile souls, permanently limited to one purchase, containing consciousness backup *1, body backup *1, right square bracket. Note, consciousness backup and body backup will be automatically triggered after the machine soul dies. The strength of the machine soul and body during the backup will be based on the standard before death. When the backup is triggered, the new body will be airdropped to the safe hangar, where the machine soul was repaired last time. Price $0. This is a real insurance, free insurance that can allow Yuzhao to revive once. Although there are fixed consciousness backups and machine backups available for purchase in the mall, Yuzhao can't afford them now. Every time a backup is triggered, the corresponding evolution points will be deducted according to the current machine soul and machine body strength. The stronger, the more points will be deducted. When the balance is insufficient, the backup will not take effect. So even if Yuzhao has this insurance, he can't fight with others like Beiyang. First, there is only one backup, and second, the strength of the machine soul and machine body before death will be used as the standard for the backup. If he uses this backup when he is still so weak, it will be a huge loss. However, fate will not develop in the direction people expect. For example, now, the escape pod boot program is starting. What are you doing? Beiyang found that the synchronization rate with Crossing Cheyenne was rapidly decreasing. Of course, it's to let you escape. Yuzhao had already made plans to use this insurance, but he couldn't back up the driver. Trust me, you will see me in the dark sky again. Escape capsule guidance failed. Error reason, the chain device is damaged, and the escape capsule cannot enter the scheduled launch position. Beiyang wanted to say something, but was immediately interrupted by Yuzhao. Trust me. When Yuzhao repeated these 3 words again, Beiyang finally swallowed back what he wanted to say. Although the chain device was damaged, Yuzhao could still use a more brutal method. Directly throw the escape capsule out with Crossing Cheyenne's hand. Neural synchronization has been disconnected. Beiyang jumped down from the control position and sat in the escape capsule located behind the cab. Bang! Crossing Cheyenne tore open his armor again and grabbed the closed escape capsule in his hand. Beiyang's hands were tightly pressed against the transparent hatch, and a pair of red pupils were looking at Crossing Cheyenne's giant single eye. As if sensing Beiyang's nervousness and uneasiness, Crossing Cheyenne raised his other hand and gave Beiyang a thumbs up. Believe me, even though the two people's neural synchronization had been disconnected, Beiyang read the words from Crossing Cheyenne's gesture. The power of the power reactor has reached its upper limit. The next second, Crossing Cheyenne waved his arm and threw the escape pod out fiercely like throwing a javelin. Looking at the silver flying object that was almost about to break the sound barrier in the sky, Yuzaro felt that the stone in his heart had finally fallen to the ground. It's a pity that my two new mechas haven't been warmed up yet. Yuzaro mocked himself. He knew that once a monster of this level appeared, the Watcher Alliance would immediately enter a level 1 alert state. All legions would be dispatched together to launch an extermination. On crossing Shine's energy radar, there were more than a dozen red dots of different sizes. It feels like it will be a big battle, but before that, I have to hold you back first. The huge torrent of data once again filled Yuzaro's body, making his consciousness boil instantly. All three mechas entered overload mode. Come on. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28. The only line of defense. Demon sharks, redback shrimps, hammer-headed beasts. More and more level 3 monsters emerged from the surface of the water in the Farsi area, just like algae that multiplied infinitely in the water. Yuzaro, who had run out of ammunition and food, lost all means of long-range attack. He could only control 3 mechas to fight the monsters in close combat. Too many. Yuzaro had already felt something was wrong. Judging from the number alone, the scale of this attack could be regarded as a beast-tide. The monsters did not give him time to think about it. As the hammer-headed beast roared towards the night sky for the first time, the monsters that had broken out of the water locked their eyes on the 3 mechas at the same time. This strange and weird orderliness made Yuzaro feel a chill on his back. Swish. The surging waves slapped the rocks on the shallows. Almost at the same moment, all the monsters sprinted towards the position where the mechas stood. The whole scene was like a locust plague passing through, which made people's scalps numb. The scorpion was the first to bear the brunt, and was the first to enter the battle with the monster. For a 3rd generation mecha, destroying a 3rd level monster is not a difficult task. The arms of the scorpion suddenly deformed, and the wrist armor folded to both sides, revealing 6 mini turbines. The surging power was instantly injected into the scorpion's fists. When the 60-meter tall redback shrimp raised its giant claws that were larger than its head, the scorpion chose to directly use its fists to fight back. Bang! The giant shock wave that was enough to distort the air quickly set off a huge wave of more than 10 meters on the sea surface. The seemingly indestructible giant claws of the redback shrimp were instantly shattered by the scorpion, and the whole process was as clean and neat as smashing an egg with a hammer. The severely injured redback shrimp inevitably retreated, but before it moved a few steps, the scorpion's other giant fist swung straight at its cylindrical head. The redback shrimp didn't even have time to roar, and its head was smashed into its flat body like a rivet. Suddenly, green blood gushed out of the cracked body of the redback shrimp like a spring, and fell into the sea. But this was just the beginning. Facing the death of their companions, the charging monsters had no sympathy, but became even more excited. A hammer-headed beast stepped directly on the corpse of the red-backed shrimp and crashed into the scorpion. The hammer-headed beast was one of the prototypes of the aggregate beast that Crossing Shine had seen in the dark sky before. The siege hammer-like hard head of the aggregate beast was taken from the genes of the 3rd level monster hammer-headed beast. But this time, it was no longer the old 1st generation Mecha Crossing Shine who faced the hammer-headed beast, but the 3rd generation Mecha Scorpion. Giant Claw Thermal Energy Cannon is activated. As the system prompt sounded, the scorpion opened its right hand, and the 5 fingers made of giant force alloy retracted to the back, revealing the hot muzzle hidden at the wrist connection. Fire! The shining orange light directly hit the head of the hammer-headed beast, blasting its hard head into a ball of meat paste. The hammer-headed beast that lost its head finally stopped charging, and rolled over like a truck out of control on a shallow beach not far from the scorpion. On the other side, the cobra had just cut off the giant claws of a redback shrimp with its wrist blade. Although the cobra's power is not as strong as the scorpion, the fang chemical wrist blade it is equipped with can easily cut through the skin and bones of any level 3 monster. Standing behind 2 3rd generation mechas, Crossing Shine continued to use a hardening skill to strengthen the wrist blades of the slasher on both arms, and use the sharp tip of the knife to cut open the vital points of each monster. But after only 3 minutes of this battle, Yuzao already felt that his computing memory was about to exceed the upper limit. The Scorpion was facing the entanglement of 4 monsters at the same time. Even if it could quickly solve one of them, new monsters would pounce on it. The situation of the Cobra was even worse. Due to the low physical resistance of its own armor, coupled with the serious damage caused by the previous battle, its mobility has now declined significantly. As for Crossing Shan, he was more passive, because the hardening skill itself had a cooldown interval. This first generation mecha on the verge of its limit could only engage in detours with the monsters when hardening could not be used. The 3 mechas were currently in an overloaded state, and the situation faced by each one was quite complicated. Soul synchronization. Yuzao decided to directly activate the soul synchronization skill. Since his memory was almost exhausted, he might as well kill more monsters while he was awake. 3 blue lights immediately appeared in different parts of the 3 mechas. The Scorpion's turbo-powered acceleration punch was strengthened, and all 6 mini-turbines broke through the speed limit, increasing the power level of the 2 fists by a full double. Bang! The strengthened Scorpion would take the life of monster every time it punched. The Cobra's strengthening was given to the power unit responsible for connecting the body skeleton, which made it qualitatively different in elasticity and density. The Cobra, which was originally a light mecha, was more agile and could dodge all attacks even when facing multiple monsters. Crossing Shan's enhancement was in the strength of the Slayer's wrist blade, so that he could use hardening to concentrate on strengthening his defense to prevent his body from suffering more damage. One monster after another fell in front of the 3 bravely fighting mechas, and the shallows under their feet had been completely dyed green by the blood of the beasts. But these monsters kept killing more and more. Finally, after a sound like a string breaking, Yuzao's memory collapsed. The effect of the machine soul synchronization disappeared immediately. The 6 mini-turbines on the Scorpion's arms all stopped at the same time, and the waste heat that could no longer be accumulated exploded directly from the connection port of the armor, emitting bursts of white smoke. The Cobra, who wanted to avoid the attack, fell directly from midair, but when he wanted to stand up, he found that all his muscle units had been worn out and were making a creaking sound under the heavy load. Crossing Shan Slayer's giant blade also failed to cut off the giant claws of the redback shrimp. After the broken blade rotated half a circle in the air, it pierced straight into the beach. Sleepiness hit Yuzao like a tide, and his brain was warning him to rest quickly. Yuzao knew that if he really closed his eyes now, the next time he opened his eyes, he would appear in the hangar under the dark sky. But until now, Yuzao still couldn't see the unknown monster with an energy level of 5 in the radar. Even though this huge red dot had filled the entire radar screen, the earth was still shaking, and the howling wind and the surging waves kept hitting the monsters and mechas on the shallows. If this is really a beast tide, why didn't the Alliance receive an early warning? Yuzao forced himself not to close his eyes, and his brain turned rapidly. The deep sea detector has covered all the sea areas, and such a large-scale group migration cannot be discovered. But Yuzao no longer had time to think about it. The monster surged onto the coast dyed green by beast blood like a tide, gradually engulfing the 3 fallen mechas. Chapter 29 Battlefield Medical Treatment. A large friendly air unit has been detected. The system is identifying it. Unit name: Truth. Identification code: OSC 101. Unit type: M2 Legion class transport ship. Affiliation: Overwatch Alliance, Omega Research Complex. Just when Yuzao was ready to die, the system prompt brought him unexpected news. Bang, bang, bang. Whether it was the roar of the monster or the surging waves, it could not stop the explosion that penetrated the sound barrier from resounding through the world. Friendly mecha is approaching. Boom. Yuzao could feel something huge falling from the sky, and the landing point was less than 2 kilometers behind him. But he didn't expect that this was just the beginning. More and more vibrations and loud noises appeared beside Yuzao. It was a sonata of steel and artillery fire. Mary, take your people to give these 3 mechas first aid. As soon as the voice fell, Yuzao felt that the 3 bodies were dragged to the shore by different mechas. It was not until a cool feeling swept through Yuzao's body that his consciousness became clear again. Someone manually released the memory space for him. The first scene that caught Yuzao's eyes was a pure white mecha lying on Crossing Shine's chest. Just from the material of the armor and the structure of the fuselage, Yuzao knew that this was a specialized 3rd generation decisive battle mecha. Just when he was wondering why a specialized mecha would lie on him instead of cleaning up the monster, Yuzao suddenly saw the mecha raise its right hand that had just been blocked. It was a giant mechanical device installed on the arm of the mecha. Just from the length alone, it was more than 20 meters. Wait, what are you going to do? Yuzao couldn't see the purpose of this mechanical device at first, but the pure white mecha was going to extend this device into Crossing Shine's body. Yuzao almost subconsciously wanted to control Crossing Shine to climb up, but he soon found that the tonnage of this white mecha was obviously much heavier than Crossing Shine. As long as this mecha was still pressing on Crossing Shine, he couldn't move. So Yuzao could only watch the white mech insert its hand into Crossing Shine's body. Sizzle. Yuzao heard the sound of welding coming from Crossing Shine's abdomen. Is he repairing the mech? This strange scene made Yuzao silent for a long time, because in his cognition, any repair, maintenance, or modification involving mechas must be completed in the hangar. However, he did see with his own eyes that he was being repaired by another mech. But isn't this a waste of resources? Installing such a large mechanical device, is it just to help other mechas weld parts? Facts have proved that Yuzao was too naive. The next second, the white mech pulled out its arm, and the seemingly bloated mechanical device actually began to deform. Welding gun, motor drill, magnetic converter, condensation spray gun. Yuzao now understood that the other party had directly installed a tool library on the battlefield. Repairing mechas was considered a waste of resources, and this configuration would probably have no problem shooting turrets directly on the battlefield. At the same time, the Scorpion and the Cobra also encountered the same situation, which made Yuzao have to wonder if the other party was a mass-produced model. Unfortunately, the system failed to identify the information of this mecha. In other words, this type of mecha is not included in the mobile armor core of the Watcher Alliance. In just 5 minutes, the 3 mechas controlled by Yuzao all received basic repairs and escaped the fate of the body destruction. Despite this, the battle continued. When Yuzao controlled the 3 mechas to stand up again, the entire coast had completely turned into a Shura field with a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. The corpses of dozens of monsters piled up on each other, forming a plain on the shallow sea area. The sea breeze baked by the artillery fire carried a pungent stench and drifted to the farther land. Dozens of mechas used guns and sharp blades to clear a safe zone. You can't kill them all. You can't kill them all. The one speaking on the public channel was a dark red mecha equipped with heavy weapons. Yuzao noticed its code name, Lava. Similarly, this mecha was not recognized by Yuzao's system, but from the appearance, its height was between the 2nd and 3rd generation mechas. Damn it. Lava's driver cursed, calling truth. The target mecha is out of danger, requesting to evacuate with the target. Rejected. We have to resist this beastside. Truth rejected Lava's request. This is not our original mission. Lava was very emotional, but he chose to vent his anger on the monsters, and there is nothing here except these endless beasts. I didn't see any level 5 monsters. This was also Yuzao's question. We are analyzing the detailed data of the energy signal. It is estimated that it will take another 17 minutes. During this period, you must continue to advance the front line. The closer you are to the energy source, the more data you can collect. Received. Lava was silent for several seconds before he held back the urge to curse. At this moment, the white mecha standing behind Crossing Shine finally spoke. Your mecha is in a bad condition. Please do not continue to participate in the battle. The broadcasting voice of the white mecha obviously came from a lady. We will handle this. Please wait patiently where you are. As soon as the lady finished speaking, the 3 white mechas all walked towards the battlefield in front. It was not until then that Yuzao noticed that these mechas were carrying giant backpacks that were almost the same size as their bodies. What is this? Yuzao had just asked a question when he saw these backpacks quickly begin to deform. These backpacks are assembled from dozens of small components, each of which is equipped with an intelligent sensing docking system and an independent multi-angle macro rocket injector. In just a few seconds, these components automatically found the corresponding installation ports on the white Mecha and became part of the Mecha. Heavy armor, serrated battle blades, hydraulic thrusters, auxiliary anti-seismic units. Yuzao watched the three angels in white turn into heavy armored warriors with his own eyes. Not only that, even the multifunctional mechanical arm that Yuzao thought was specially used for engineering maintenance has transformed into a multifunctional combination gun. Sure enough, after the three heavy armored angels joined the battle, the entire battle line was pushed back from the shore to the shallow sea area. Warning, multiple high threat targets detected approaching, energy level. For as soon as the system warning popped up, Yuzao saw several unusually tall figures emerging from the water in the distant sea area. Even at a distance of thousands of meters, the dazzling light on their bodies could be seen. Almost at the moment, when the radar detected the level 4 monster, lava turned up the volume of the broadcast to the maximum. Stop advancing. Chapter 30 today. If this beast tide only included level 3 monsters, then the Mecha Corps currently led by lava would be able to cope with it. But if level 4 monsters also joined the battlefield, the situation would be completely different. A standard 3rd generation decisive Mecha is enough to fight 3 level 3 monsters at the same time, and some specially modified 3rd generation mechas can even face more. But a level 4 monster can face more than 3 3rd generation mechas at the same time. 2 years ago, when the first level 4 monster abomination landed in the capital of Aurea, everyone was convinced that the new Freedom Mecha Corps would intercept it in the vast ocean. But no one could have imagined that abomination took only 27 minutes to destroy all 5 second generation mechas. When the people with painted faces and holding celebratory placards saw abomination launching a death sprint towards the city, they knew that the nightmare had really come. When the Watcher Alliance killed Abomination in the Aurea Basin at the cost of destroying 12 mechas, 79 hours had passed since Abomination landed. Before the Abomination fell, it had destroyed 7 cities including the capital of Aurea, killing 14 million people and injuring 22 million people. This tragic battle was called Hell's Hardship by people, and it was from this time that voices questioning the Watcher Alliance gradually began to appear all over the world. After this battle, humans began to re-examine monsters and no longer regarded them as simply extremely destructive beasts. The Abomination had a terrifying performance far beyond human expectations in terms of strength and intelligence. Nowadays, humans have created more powerful 3rd generation mechas, but level 4 monsters are still the most threatening of all monsters. They are ferocious, cunning, and extremely destructive. Mechas are being updated, and monsters are also evolving. It's Thunder, Siren, and Avenger. Lava recognized the 3 huge monsters thousands of meters away. Yuzao's system also immediately gave relevant information about the 3 monsters. Monster name, Thunder, monster type, type 3rd, energy level. 4 monster rating, strength 8, agility 8, defense 7. Monster features, a purely physical monster resembling a crocodile, with scales covering its body that cannot be harmed by conventional armor-piercing weapons, and a 35-meter long tail that is powerful enough to flatten a mountain when it is swung. Its limbs are extremely sturdy, and its 2 forelimbs are the same size as its head. Its destructive power is enough to tear apart any material, except giant metal within 3 moves. Whether in water or on land, Thunder's agility is comparable to that of the lightest 3rd generation Mecha. Weaknesses, jaw, abdomen, and the connection between the spine and the head. Thunder has only appeared twice in the Alliance's data records. The first time was 3 months after the Hell disaster, when Thunder attacked the joint military base of the Logan Alliance in the Infinite Sea and fled into the sea after destroying 4 second generation mechas. The second time was in the Dolan Defense War a year ago, when it was killed by the 3rd generation mechas Gospel Angel and Fearless Warrior in conjunction with the particle impact cannon. Since Zunlali disappeared after the first attack, the Watchers have not yet confirmed whether the Zunlali who died in Dolan City was the one who launched the previous raid. Monster name, Siren, monster type, type 3, energy level. 4 monster rating, strength 6, agility 9, in the sea, /7, on land, defense 6. Monster features, the Siren's body is very similar to that of a sea snake, but its upper body is wider and stronger than its lower body, and there is only one spine that runs through the entire snake body. The siren has no other organs on its body surface, only a huge mouth that can split into 4 petals, and 6 soft limbs that can release millions of volts of voltage. When the siren's whole body is glowing blue, its soft limbs will release electrical energy and plasma will be ejected from its mouth. Weaknesses: waist, tail, whole body, charged state. The siren is a level 4 monster that was discovered only a year ago. It and the Avengers launched an attack on the largest port city in the Seeing Kingdom. Although the siren is very afraid of physical attacks, its ability is fatal to all mechas. Energy weapons have little effect on it, but conventional firepower can have a good effect. In the battle that launched the attack with the Avenger, the Golden Gate base lost a total of 4 third-generation mechas, and the siren was eventually killed by a strategic level missile bombardment. Monster name: Avenger. Monster type: Type 3rd. Energy level 4. Monster rating: Strength 7, Agility 6, Defense 8. Monster features: the Avenger stands on 2 feet, has a body similar to that of a human, and is covered with a black hard shell, with extremely strong physical and energy resistance. The Avenger's shoulders can grow black bone spurs, which can be used for long-range attacks. There is a special heart under its chest shell, which allows the Avenger to spit out flames from its mouth that are strong enough to melt inferior giant metals. Weaknesses: the connection between the limbs and the torso, the special heart under the hard shell. The Avenger and the siren appeared at the same time, but the Avenger's body structure is the most special among all monsters. The hard shell allows the Avenger to effectively resist all kinds of damage, and its action logic is very similar to that of the mechas driven by humans, which has caused great trouble to the Golden Gate base. The Avenger eventually died at the hands of the 3rd generation Mecha lone hero. Now, 3 level 4 monsters that have caused devastating blows to humans have appeared together. Their appearance broke the consensus reached by humans before level 4 monsters are unique individuals. Coupled with the almost endless beast tide, Yu-Gi-Oh seemed to be able to foresee the end of everyone present. The plane was destroyed, and the people died. But for Yu-Gi-Oh, this is an opportunity with both risks and benefits. As long as he can stand alone in this crisis and kill at least 1 level 4 monster, then he can not only get a huge amount of evolution points, but also let everyone present re-examine Xingqian's strength, thereby improving his own machine soul level. Thinking of this, Yu-Gi-Oh opened the mall page under the evolution system and stared at his remaining evolution points: 10,000 points. This is the sum of the remaining points he got from killing many level 3 monsters in the beast tide. But this is the limit of what he can earn without consuming any evolution points. The situation of the 3 machines he controls is not optimistic now. Not to mention fighting against level 4 monsters, even against redback shrimps, there is a possibility of being dismantled. In his previous life, Yu-Gi-Oh liked to hoard things. He hoarded living expenses when he was in school, wages when he worked, supplies when the store was discounted, and game coins when he played games. So his friends in his previous life gave him the nickname Tun Tun Rat. But no matter what Yu-Gi-Oh hoards, it is to accumulate strength at a critical moment. If he doesn't seize this opportunity, no one can guarantee whether he will have the next time. Yu-Gi-Oh opened his eyes again. Today. Exchange successful. Thank you for your patronage. Currently available evolution points: 0. Chapter 31 Buyers and Tactics. Yu-Gi-Oh didn't buy a powerful machine part because 10,000 evolution points were only enough for him to choose one. Even if he equipped Crossing Shine with a powerful weapon, he couldn't guarantee that he could fight the entire beast tide with just one piece of equipment. So he chose a product with a higher cost effectiveness and that could be used forever: Machine Fusion. This product doesn't even need to be delivered because Crossing Shine's power furnace comes with this function, but it just needs to be unlocked. Product name: Machine Fusion. Product description: unlock the corresponding permissions of the power furnace so that the machine can quickly install parts on itself directly by material assimilation. Note, this function can be directly used to devour other machines under the control of the machine soul, and can also be used to devour parts in the unknown state price. 10,000. On the truth, a lady in a blue coat was looking down at the coastline below from the night sky. Drive Yuan, if we don't let Lava and the others evacuate, everything will be too late. Poison Scorpion stood at the door of the command room, his face full of anxiety. Dr. Yuan did not answer Scorpion's words. Her hands were casually placed on the pockets of her coat, and her sky blue eyes were still staring at the holographic digital model being built. That was the system calculating the true appearance of the level 5 monster. Our original mission was only to capture Crossing Shan. The matter of the beast tide can be handed over to other Mecha Corps. Scorpion became more and more anxious, and was about to raise her foot to approach Dr. Yuan. You are just worried about your Scorpion. Dr. Yuan's words directly stopped Scorpion's foot in midair. Since Chris came back from the black sky, I found that he paid special attention to Crossing Shan. Dr. Yuan did not look back. If the thing that fell from the Garden of Eden is really just space junk as he wrote in his report, then his words will not match Nina. Scorpion slowly retracted her foot, and cold sweat had already wet her combat uniform. After Chris learned that Crossing Shan was coming to the Silent Cemetery for an upgrade, he bought the parts that General Chen had ordered in advance in the name of Omega, and asked Gao Xianzi to trap Crossing Shan and wait for Omega to come and recycle them. Dr. Yuan finally turned around and looked at the Poison Scorpion with a smile. I guess you never thought that it was not Chris who came, but me? Boom. The Poison Scorpion's body had hit the alloy wall, and she had no way to retreat. Drive Yuan, listen to my explanation. There is nothing to explain. You are under the command of Omega, and the culprit is Chris who deceives his superiors. Dr. Yuan casually lifted her black hair, not to mention that I performed the operation on your sister, and I know you are worried about her condition. The Poison Scorpion finally breathed a sigh of relief. But you have to understand that in the eyes of monsters, everyone is their prey. Dr. Yuan changed the subject. Whether it is Omega or other Mecha Legions, they have the responsibility to stop them at all costs. Looking at Dr. Yuan's deep blue pupils, the Poison Scorpion felt like she was falling into an ice cave at this moment. Until the other legions arrive, the Truth and the Truth Defenders will not retreat. Dr. Yuan turned around again and looked at the flames on the coastline that were enough to ignite the night sky. If the monster wants to land, it has to step over our bodies. On the coast, Lava was leading all the mechas to shrink the battle line. He understood the thoughts of the doctor on the Truth, but his years of mercenary nature always made him prioritize self-protection when encountering danger. However, when he saw the 3 level 4 monsters, he knew that he would not be able to walk out of this beach alive today. What he can do now is to shrink the battle line and rebuild a formation with more intensive firepower. Mary and the other 2 White Angels are the 3 mechas standing at the end of the formation. The White Angels can not only participate in the battle, but also continuously repair other damaged mechas while fighting, and they are the existence that supports the endurance of the entire formation. I don't need to tell you. You should also know what orders Dr. Yuan will give us. Those who want to take the escape pod should take it now, otherwise it will be too late. Lava stopped, and the entire formation had arrived at the best defense point. The entire Truth Defenders team had 13 mechas in total, but no one activated the escape pod guidance program. Lava rubbed his dry eyes in the cockpit. When he was still a mercenary, his code name was Lava. Later, when the war broke out, he was recruited by Omega. When it came time to name the Mecha, his Mecha was also called Lava. At the beginning, he used a code name to avoid revealing his true identity information and to make it easier for others to remember. But more than 10 years have passed, and no one has called him by his real name. Okay, then deploy the formation according to the predetermined tactics, and prepare to fight the level 4 monster. Lava cleared all distracting thoughts, and stared at the huge figure on the sea. Received. 12 uniformed voices responded to him. At this moment, Mary, who was standing at the end of the formation, faintly felt a strange buzzing sound coming from behind her. When she turned her head, she was surprised to find that the 3 damaged mechas had stood in a row without her knowing when. The oldest Xingtian stood in the center, and the Scorpion and Cobra stood on the left and right of Xingtian respectively. The next second Xingtian's power reactor leaked a black fluid that Mary had never seen before. In just a blink of an eye, these fluids completely enveloped Xingtian. Then, the black fluid spread along Xingtian's arm to the bodies of Cobra and Scorpion. The strange humming sound came from Xingtian's strange power reactor. on the truth. Everyone's attention was temporarily focused on Xingqian. No one knew what Xingqian was doing, but that was definitely not an ability they had ever seen. Doctor, do you want Lava and the others to interrupt Xingqian? The adjutant walked to Dr. Yuan respectfully. No, I think I understand why Chris is so concerned about Xingqian now. Dr. Yuan narrowed his eyes and raised the corners of his mouth slightly. It is no longer the Mecha I designed at the beginning. On the coast, Lava had just received Dr. Yuan's order to do not interfere. So he turned his attention back to the three monsters that had arrived in the offshore area. Roar. When Zunlui, who was standing at the front, let out a roar that made people's hair stand on end, all the level 3 monsters that were charging stopped. An ominous premonition was hovering in Lava's heart. He had never heard of a monster that could command its own kind. Zunlui's golden pupils passed over Lava, who was standing at the front, and the heavy mechas standing shoulder to shoulder with him, and fell directly on the three white angels. At this moment, it seemed as if two blazing suns appeared in front of Mary's eyes. Roar. Zunlui let out a second roar. The beast tide that had been stagnant for a short time surged again. Change formation. Lava immediately gave the order, because he saw that the originally chaotic beast tide had gathered into several groups, launching a full-scale attack on them from multiple directions. The monsters are using tactics. Chapter 32, Iron Torrent. The process of body fusion was slower than Yuzao had imagined. He felt as if his consciousness was lying in the boundless void, and a mysterious force was grafting something that did not belong to him onto his body. The bodies of the scorpion and cobra were now completely covered with black fluid, and the jumping electric current appeared and disappeared around the three bodies. The whole process was like a spider hunting. The black fluid seemed to be the venom secreted by Crossing Shan, slowly digesting the two steel bodies and sending them into his body. Be careful. The roar of the lava pulled Mary's sight back from Crossing Shan. And at the moment she turned around, the dense beast tide had already launched an attack from three directions at the same time. Fire. Boom boom boom. The heavy armor standing on both sides of the team raised their arms, and the four giant Vulcan machine guns that were 15 meters long issued a deafening roar. Countless bullets flew out of the rotating gun barrels and shot at the charging beast tide like raindrops. The scorching bullets penetrated the chests of the monsters, twisting the hideous flesh into a spiral shape, and then penetrated from their backs. Countless metal shells fell to the ground like a waterfall, rolling to the feet of the steel giant. If you look down at this scene from the night sky, you can see that the dense trajectory is like a rain curtain. Go to hell, beast. Lava was already blood-curdling, and the green blood of the beasts gushed and splashed in front of him like a spring, and the roar of the monsters and the sound of flesh and blood breaking came one after another. Warning, the barrel is overheated, and the cooling control has been activated. The estimated time required: 40 seconds. Change team. With Lava's order, all the mechas standing in the front neatly put away their barrels and stepped back 3 steps. The heavy mechas originally standing in the second row immediately passed through the gap in the team and supplemented the position in the front row. Fire. The dense rain of bullets intertwined with each other, once again forming a defense network with no blind spots. At this moment, the White Angel, who was protected by the heavy armor at the back of the team, immediately began to repair the armor that had just been rotated out. The original waiting time of 40 seconds has been shortened to 20 seconds with the help of the White Angel's condensation spray gun. In the distance, Thunder's golden pupils stared at the scene in front of him. He did not move forward, but stood there like a commander. After only 4 rotations, the 120-degree fan-shaped area in front of the team had been piled up with monster corpses to form a small hill. Roar. Just when Lava gave the 5th rotation order, Thunder roared to the sky again. This made Lava feel a little uneasy. Under Thunder's roar, the nearly endless beast tide launched her charge again. Keep shooting. Lava could not guess Thunder's intention, but this did not prevent him from continuing to implement the tactics that had already achieved results. But the next second, he found the problem. The attack method of some beast tides has changed from charging to flying. A new round of monsters jumped up on the pile of corpses of their companions, trying to break through the dense firepower coverage from the air. At the same time, another part of the monsters still chose to attack from the ground. Start the missile array. This is the only way lava can think of at the moment. Keep the formation and retreat 100 meters at a constant speed. The 5 heavy armored mechas standing in the second row immediately activated the missile launchers on their shoulders and launched a round of missile volleys at the monsters attacking from the air. Boom. The surging flames exploded in the air like fireworks, and the blood rain was evaporated by the high temperature generated by the explosion before it even landed. Corpses that had lost signs of life flew out of the flames, and some had even shattered into charred pieces of meat, smashing towards lava and the others like meteorites. Change teams. Lava warned everyone with a huge volume that he had never roared in his life, but the huge pieces of meat still hit the heavy armored mechas heavily, making them lose their balance. A gap immediately appeared in the rain of bullets like a torrent of steel. We are here. At the critical moment, the 3 white angels rushed to the front row without hesitation. Their arms quickly deformed, and the magnetic needles originally used for power maintenance split from the middle and turned into 3 stabilizers surrounding the power jet. Zilla. 3 arcs with a diameter of more than 5 meters shot out from the white angels' power transmitters at the same time. Suddenly, countless dancing electric currents began to conduct crazily in the beast tide, and in an instant, all the monsters rushing in front fell down. Retreat. Under lava's command, all the heavy armored warriors immediately readjusted their formations, and the white angels retreated to the back of the team again, and the entire square began to retreat at a predetermined speed. Sure enough, after the distance was pulled back, the monsters lost the springboard formed by the pile of corpses of their companions, and could no longer break through the defense line by flying. But lava knew that he was about to face a more difficult situation. After the 3 white angels used the power shock at the same time, the power of their power furnaces would temporarily decrease, causing them to be unable to use energy tools including condensation spray guns in a short period of time. This means that the heavy mechas must survive the 40-second cooling control time. But at full firepower, the Vulcan machine gun can only fire continuously for 30 seconds. Everyone will face a full 10-second firepower vacuum period. Lava's brows were completely twisted into a knot at this moment, and his brain was spinning rapidly, searching for all ways to withstand this 10-second vacuum period. He actually had the answer in his mind, but he still stubbornly excluded that method. But he had no time. As the last shell fell to the ground, all the Vulcan machine guns stopped roaring at this moment. The hot barrels, the still spinning wheels, and the white smoke that had not yet dissipated from the muzzles. First round of missiles. Fire. The mechas that put away their machine guns fired the first round of missiles under lava's command. Second round of missiles. Fire. Lava knew very well that missiles could not play a role in continuously suppressing the endless tide of beasts. Bang bang bang. The second round of missiles was fired from the shoulder of the Mecha that had moved to the front row, blowing all the monsters that had advanced several dozen meters into pieces. The next second, dozens of monsters broke through the red flames, ignoring their burned bodies, and rushed straight towards the mechas. Buzz. The 2 heavy mechas raised the chainsaws on their arms, and the rotating chains were engraved with sharp teeth. This was the solution that lava thought of, but others also thought of it. Use your life to drag through this 10-second vacuum period. William. Robin. Lava shouted their names at the top of his lungs in the cockpit. The 2 mechas that had already rushed towards the beast tide also turned back at the same time tacitly and took a last look at the retreating team. That was their silent farewell. Chapter 33, The Return of the God of War. In the blink of an eye, the 2 mechas were swallowed up by the beast tide. In lava's communicator, only the sound of chainsaw cutting and flesh bursting could be heard. 5 seconds later, there was only noise in lava's ears. On the truth, everyone saw this silent scene. Calling the truth, the Red Fortress Legion is expected to arrive at the battlefield in 7 minutes. Calling the truth, the Kanghalangayan Legion is expected to arrive at the battlefield in 5 minutes. Calling the truth. Listening to the continuous communication coming from the headset, Dr. Yuan did not respond to anyone in person, but just cut the connection to the communication officer. She folded her hands in front of her chest, her eyes fixed on the retreating array below. 5 minutes ago, Dr. Yuan had broadcast the real-time picture of the entire front line to the major Watcher legions rushing to the silent cemetery. This move shocked many people, because no one could have thought that the first to arrive at the battlefield was the non-staff legion led by Omega. And the leader of this non-staff legion was actually Yuan Zhen, the vice president of the all-knowing hall. But compared to seeing one of the founders of Omega in person, the other legions were more surprised that she had 13 third-generation mechas under her command. This is a number that even many countries can hardly imagine. But for Yuan Zhen, she doesn't care what others think of her. William, Robin. Yuan Zhen repeated the names of the two in a voice that only she could hear. 5 seconds left. Lava's sight always stayed in the direction where the two mechas were swallowed, but there were more troublesome problems waiting for him. He couldn't lose any more mechas. Even if he sacrificed 2 more team members to fill these 5 seconds, his defense formation would continue to lose personnel due to the lack of firepower. Until the next vacuum period comes, what awaits all of them is only death. But death will not make him retreat. Just as Lava was controlling the Mecha and preparing to move forward, another giant steel hand pressed his shoulder. It's not time for you to leave, Captain. The next second, the two mechas driven by the Liu couple passed Lava's position and rushed towards the oncoming beast tide without hesitation. Lava closed his eyes and turbid tears rolled around the corners of his wrinkled eyes. He gritted his teeth tightly, not letting himself make any sound. Even if everyone's fate will go to the same place, Lava must firmly lead everyone to fight to the end. He can't fall down yet. But, at this moment, a strange voice suddenly came from behind Lava, and his system also issued a warning. Lava subconsciously followed his instinct and dodged the crisis sideways. It was a black long-handled battle axe. And that strange hum was the sound of the battle axe breaking through the air at a speed that broke the sound barrier. Before the Liu couple came into contact with the beast tide, the battle axe passed through the gap between the two mechas and went straight through the hammer-headed beast that was rushing in the front. But the battle axe did not stop. The huge battle axe rushed all the way, drawing a straight line in the surging beast tide. In the end, the battle axe was inserted into the pile of corpses made of monsters. The surging beast tide was completely still at this moment. There was a hole with a diameter of 10 meters on the chests of more than 20 monsters. On the truth, everyone was deeply shocked by this scene. Even the communications officer who was connecting with the major legions fell into silence at this moment. Only Yuan Zhen let out a long breath. She put her hands back into her coat pockets and turned her eyes to the digital model that was about to be completed. Boom. 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 Crossing Cheyenne walked forward step by step, and his iconic red eye was always locked on Zun Lei standing in the distance. Whether it was a heavy armor or a white angel, they all stood on both sides and made way for Crossing Cheyenne. Mary carefully looked at this familiar yet unfamiliar mecha. Crossing Cheyenne's mecha has reached a height of 85 meters, and the entire fuselage is covered with a layer of black heavy armor with a thickness of more than 2,500 millimeters. Under the two shoulder armors with fangs, there is an armor engraved with sharp serrations. The evil ghost's fierce face protruding in front of the chest armor is frightening just by looking at it. What Mary didn't know was that under this heavy molecular memory armor, Crossing Cheyenne's body was also covered with a layer of light anti-energy inner armor. Even from the appearance alone, Crossing Cheyenne's armor was already very oppressive. Not to mention that he was 5 meters taller than all the third generation mechas. Next, leave it to me. No one expected that Crossing Cheyenne would speak, and it was a male voice. It was not until then that Mary noticed that there was no one at the control position of Crossing Cheyenne. In other words, this mecha has been acting independently. Roar. Before everyone had time to accept this fact, Zun Lei in the distance roared again. You retreat. Crossing Cheyenne stretched out his sturdy arms and said in an irresistible tone, retreat. Although Lava could no longer sort out the current situation on the battlefield, he instinctively followed the other party's advice at this moment and led the remaining mechas to retreat behind Crossing Cheyenne. Sure enough, just as Lava and others had just stood still, all the monsters pounced on Crossing Cheyenne alone. Lava did not see any long-range attack weapons on Crossing Cheyenne, which meant that Crossing Cheyenne could only fight with the endless beast tide. In his mind, the scene of William and Robin rushing towards the beast tide immediately emerged. You are committing suicide. But Crossing Cheyenne completely ignored Lava's warning. A scorpion tail flashing with silver light emerged from Crossing Shine's right arm and hooked the giant axe stuck in the mountain of corpses. The next second, the heavy and sharp black battle axe returned to Crossing Shine's hand. At the same time, the dense beast tide rushed to Crossing Shine like a huge wave. Boom. More than a dozen monsters submerged Crossing Shine's tall body like a tsunami, and those monsters on the periphery even climbed on their companions' bodies to crawl towards Crossing Shine, who was no longer visible. Soon, Crossing Shine was pressed under countless monsters with fangs and claws, like a living mountain in the surging beast tide. Prepare to fire. Lava almost subconsciously shouted the order. No matter what Crossing Shine is, he is his comrade at this moment. But just when all the heavy armored mechas raised the preheated rotating Vulcan machine guns, an unexpected scene happened. Bang! Crossing Shine stood up again, like a mountain rising from the bottom of the sea, breaking free from all the restraints on him. Then, the red power furnace on Crossing Shine's chest let out a low roar. He held the axe in both hands and swung it hard at the beast tide in front of him. A flash of black light. Countless monsters were cut in half. Chapter 34. Dancing. Yuziro didn't waste any material. When Crossing Shine merged with the other two mechas, Yuziro decided to let Crossing Shine inherit all the advantages. The two variable frequency nuclear power reactors were all used to fill Crossing Shine's existing power reactors, doubling the overall power. The poisonous chemical wrist blades on the Cobra and Crossing Shine's own slasher wrist blades were all decomposed, and the extra molecular memory alloy was added to forge an extremely tough long-handled battle axe. The black blood corrosive energy rifle was proportionally compressed by Crossing Shine and placed in his left arm, with the muzzle hidden under his arm, and the excess metal material was used to construct Crossing Shine's body skeleton. The cost of proportional scaling is that the caliber becomes smaller and the destructive power is greatly reduced. The needle corrosive missile was inherited by Crossing Shine on the shoulder, and the giant claw thermal energy acceleration cannon was placed on the right arm. The scorpion tail combined giant metal chainsword was moved from the spine to Crossing Shine's chest, and it can drill out from the wrist along the arm bones. The heavy armor that the scorpion was proud of was directly installed by Crossing Shine on the outside of the body, while the anti-energy light armor of the Cobra was used as inner armor to cover the surface of the body skeleton. After this fusion, Crossing Shine has almost stood at the top of the third generation Mecha. But there is a price to pay for this. Crossing Shine, who inherited all the advantages of the two mechas, has reached a terrifying weight of 18,000 tons. Even if the lava with heavy weapons all over his body weighs only 16,500 tons. And Crossing Shine's current weight is still without any long-range ammunition, because before the body fusion, the other two mechas' spare ammunition had been emptied. Although Crossing Shine is much inferior in mobility, such a heavy tonnage also makes it easier for Crossing Shine to gain an advantage in close combat. For example, now, when Yuziro swung the second axe with all his strength, he could even see the surrounding air shaking. The indestructible axe once again drew a black arc in the air, and the sharp and heavy axe blade crushed the bones and flesh of all monsters as easily as cutting vegetables. But before Crossing Shine could retract his axe, an unusually large hammer-headed beast crashed straight into Crossing Shine's power reactor. Bang! After a loud bang that shook the earth, the hammer-headed beast's body stopped moving. Crossing Shine still stood there, motionless. The sticky green beast blood splattered all over the ghost-faced armor on Crossing Shine's chest. The broken skull of the hammer-headed beast slowly slid off Crossing Shine's body and fell to the ground with a plop. Yuziro didn't even hear the armor damage warning issued by the system. The only thing he heard was the sound of evolution points flying into his balance. It's my turn. This time, Crossing Shine took the initiative to attack, swung the axe, and went upstream in the surging beast tide. 1 circle. 2 circles. As Crossing Shine moved forward, he kept using the axe to clear all obstacles in front of him. Every time the black axe passed a circle, it would bring up countless pieces of scattered meat and a loud noise that was enough to make the air tremble. Whenever Crossing Shine's attack failed, countless monsters wanted to take this opportunity to tear him into pieces. But what greeted them were only broken giant claws, shattered skulls, and the next round of giant axes that crushed them into slag. Crossing Shine swung the giant axe tirelessly, step by step, stepping on countless disgusting corpses, and constantly pushing the surging beast tide back to the starting point little by little. On the truth, everyone looked at this spectacle in amazement. Crossing Shine, who was alone, could fight the entire beast tide alone with only a black giant axe. He would not be injured, would not be timid, and even maintained the rated power every time he swung the giant axe, turning countless monsters into dead souls under his axe. How did he do it? Could it be that he absorbed the scorpion and the cobra? Does a mecha of this strength really exist? And Crossing Shine has no driver controlling it now. Yuan Zhen listened to the people on the spaceship talking one after another, and a smile slowly rose at the corner of her mouth. Crossing Shine's performance was indeed far beyond Yuan Zhen's expectations, but this was not a bad thing for her. The more mysterious and powerful it is, the more valuable it is. In fact, it is not only the lava on the ground and the truth in the sky that are shocked. All the legions that are about to arrive at the silent cemetery saw this scene. That can be called absurd. If all our mechas are like this, then the monsters would have been expelled from this planet long ago. It is said that Xingqian seems to be a mecha that can act independently, so doesn't it even need a driver? Drive Yuan is the designer of Xingqian. Maybe this is Omega's latest technology. Even Xingqian back then couldn't be so strong. Although Yuzao couldn't hear the size of these people, he could feel that he, as a machine soul, was growing rapidly. His computing power is getting stronger and stronger, and his processing memory is getting larger and larger. With every step forward, the degree of fusion between him and Xingqian is increasing. Every time he swings the giant axe, the movements he controls Xingqian to make are more natural. Yuzao can even hear the beautiful sound deep in the power furnace. That is the sound of countless heavy atoms completing the fission reaction. That is the sound of his heart beating. When Crossing Shine swung the axe in front of him for the 32nd time, the entire beast tide had turned into lifeless flesh and blood under his feet. In the vision of the truth, the straight line that Crossing Shine walked was like a sharp knife, piercing through countless corpses and a sea of blood. Roar. Thunder roared the most frightening roar, but this time, it was only itself that responded to it. Thunder slowly bent down its body, so that its huge head and the wild giant tail formed a straight line. The next second, Thunder moved. The whistling wind was its breath, the splashing waves were its footprints, and the galloping thunder had already turned itself into the sharpest weapon. That was no longer the speed that its body could have. Even if Crossing Shine took off all his equipment and added 5 rocket launchers behind him, Yuzao could not guarantee that he could catch up with Thunder's speed. Too fast. Almost at the moment when Yuzao decided to be alert, the incredibly fast Thunder was already face to face with him. But before he could even see Zunlo's movements, a thick giant claw had already grabbed Xingqian's head. Boom. Yuzao instinctively held the giant axe in front of him and blocked this fierce and violent attack. The vibrating air set off a 50-meter high wave on the sea surface, and the sound of metal and claws colliding echoed between heaven and earth for a long time like thunder. Xingqian's red eye instantly brightened. Yuzao knew that he had an opponent. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35, As Fast as Thunder. With just one strike, Crossing Shine felt a terrifying gap between level 3 monsters and level 4 monsters. His giant axe could easily cut a dozen level 3 monsters in half. It felt like splitting a dozen stacked printing papers, and there would be no pause in the whole process. But Zunlo is not paper, but a steel plate. Yuzao, who took the blow, could still feel the vibrations echoing between the axe handles with both hands. But the power furnace on Crossing Shine's chest glowed brightly, and the color changed from dark red to red. Yuzao directly increased the power of the power furnace by 50%. Crossing Shine suddenly exerted force with both hands holding the axe handle, pushing Zunlo's claws away from himself little by little. Crossing Shine, who had increased the power, had overwhelmed Zunlo in terms of strength. Zunlo seemed to realize this as well. Seeing his trembling, claws being pushed back by Crossing Shan. His sight shifted from Crossing Shan's head to the power furnace on his chest. Just as Crossing Shan was about to put the axe handle on Zunloi's neck, the force resisting him suddenly disappeared. Zunloi retracted his claws. Xingchen, who was still exerting his strength, lost his balance in an instant and fell forward suddenly. In a flash, Zunloi suddenly stepped back, leaned sideways, and dodged Xingchen's pounce. The next second, a 35-meter long tail swung straight at Xingchen's torso. Boom. After a loud noise like the collapse of the sky and the crack of the earth, Xingchen, who was supposed to fall forward, was forced to retreat. Yu Zhao felt as if he had just hit a moving mountain, but fortunately he activated hardening in time. Otherwise, with the force of the previous blow, his armor would probably be scrapped soon. Roar. Seeing that the previous tail swing had already slapped Xingchen back several steps, Zunloi immediately roared and attacked Xingchen fiercely. Xingchen, who stabilized his center of gravity, immediately used a giant axe to block Zunloi's claw that was rushing straight to his chest. Bang. But before the sound of the claws colliding with the axe disappeared, Zunloi's other claw rushed directly from under the axe handle towards Xingchen's abdomen. Too fast. Even though Xingchen had the advantage in strength, Zunloi's speed was so exaggerated that Xingchen could not cope with it at all. The time Xingchen took to launch one attack was enough for Zunloi to launch two moves in a row. Xingchen could only take this blow before hardening was completely cooled down. Warning, 37% damage to the abdominal armor. Looking at his abdominal armor, that was almost torn, Xingchen quickly retreated and opened up some distance. If he continued to fight in such close combat, Xingchen would sooner or later be torn to pieces, because he could not keep up with Zunloi's speed. But before Xingchen could retreat a few steps, Zunloi's giant tail swung at him again. Bang! Another heavy blow hit the side of Xingchen's waist. Fortunately, this time there was hardening, plus Xingchen's own tonnage, so that Xingchen was not mashed on the spot while stabilizing his body. But Yu Zhao was almost trapped in a deadly cycle. Close combat, distance, thunder tail swing. Crossing Shan was forced to use hardening defense. Since Crossing Shan now has no long range attack means, once the two sides are out of the fight, Crossing Shan can only be beaten unilaterally. Thunder's speed is too fast. Just as Yu Zhao was desperately thinking about how to end this vicious cycle, a familiar figure suddenly appeared in his mind. If it was Bai Ying, what would she do? Roar. Thunder's roar interrupted Yu Zhao's thoughts, and Crossing Shan had to face Thunder's violent attack again. Once, twice. Compared with Thunder, Crossing Shan's movements are like an old man in his twilight years. Every time he blocks Thunder's attack, other parts of his body will bear another impact. The system's alarms kept echoing in Crossing Shan's cockpit. There was no intact armor on his body. The more seriously injured Crossing Shan was, the more unscrupulous Thunder's attacks became. Every time Thunder's claws hit, the amplitude would be larger and the force would be stronger than the last time. Finally, under Zunloi's violent attack, the armor on Xingchen's chest was torn apart. The red power furnace lost its protection, like a flame exposed in the wind and snow, which could be extinguished at any time. Zunloi's golden eyes immediately revealed a fierce light. But it did not attack the power furnace directly, but continued to grab Xingchen's head. This is Zunloi's usual trick, using its own agility to make Xingchen only defend one of the multiple attacks. If Xingchen does not block this attack, his head will be completely torn apart. But if Xingchen blocks it, Zunloi's next attack will go straight to the power furnace. At that time, Xingchen, who has no time to react, will inevitably be scrapped on the spot. Swish. Zunloi's beast claws swung at Xingchen's head at a speed fast enough to tear the air, and Xingchen did not choose to defend. The next second, the huge beast claws directly tore Xingchen's head off his torso. Suddenly, a dazzling spark burst out from the broken part of Xingchen's head and flew into the air with part of the broken spine. However, Crossing Shan did not fall down as Zunlei expected. On the contrary, he had raised the giant axe in his hand high at his side. Zunlei, aware of the danger, suddenly widened his golden eyes, hurriedly threw Crossing Shan's head in his hand to the side, and attacked Crossing Shan's power furnace at full speed. But this time, Crossing Shan was faster. The black giant axe that had been strengthened by hardening chopped down directly from the upper side of Zunlei, and the sharp axe blade broke through the hard scales on the surface of Zunlei with unstoppable momentum and cut deeply into its flesh and blood. Along with Zunlei's miserable raw, dark green beast blood and broken scales flew in the air together. In the end, the huge beast claws did not have time to touch Crossing Shine's exposed power furnace, and Zunlei's huge body fell directly into the sea. But just when Zunlei was about to fall over, it forcibly propped up its body with its limbs on the ground. At the same time, Crossing Shine's hands holding the giant axe suddenly felt a huge brute force. Puff! Zunlei actually forcibly pulled out the axe blade embedded in his body and quickly distanced himself from Crossing Shine. Yuzao didn't expect Zunlei to be so cruel to him. The wound, which was already several meters deep, had completely burst open after this pull, and the blood of the beast gushed out along Zunlei's shoulder like a spring. Looking at the whole picture, Zunlei's arm was just like a piece of meat that was chopped in half. However, just when Yuzao thought Zunlei wanted to escape, the thick giant tail swung towards him again. But now he has enough time to react. Crossing Shine stretched out his left hand and directly hugged Zunlei's tail that was swinging at high speed. Crash! The collision set off a huge wave that was enough to cover Crossing Shine's knees. The huge impact force made Crossing Shine couldn't help but step back a few steps to the side. But in the end, Crossing Shine stood still. Chapter 36 Undercurrent. The damage caused by Crossing Shine's axe was devastating. Zunlei's tail swing had already used all his strength, but the power was not even as strong as a normal tail strike. Roar. Along with Zunlei's miserable roar, Yuzao could feel that the other party was trying to pull the tail back from his hand. Humph, you want to escape? A silver metal chainsword emerged from under Crossing Shine's arm, wrapping around Zunlei's giant tail like a venomous snake. Then, Crossing Shine plunged the giant axe into the shallow sea, grabbed the giant tail with both hands, and kept pulling Zunlei towards him. Zunlei, who was lying in the water, kept wailing, and the only remaining claws of the beast kept flapping on the sea surface, but he couldn't find anything to grab. No matter how Zunlei struggled, the speed at which he was dragged towards Crossing Shine did not slow down at all. In just 10 rounds, Crossing Shine had already pulled Zunlei's huge body in front of him. It was not until then that Crossing Shine finally let go of his hands and took back the chainsword. Boom. But what followed was Crossing Shine's huge foot stepping on the tail. Even if Crossing Shine changed his posture, Zunlei was powerless to break free. It had exhausted all its strength in the struggle. Crossing Shine picked up the giant axe stuck in the shallows again and raised it above his head. Overload mode is on. As the system prompt sounded, the power furnace on Crossing Shine's chest had changed from a low hum to a manic roar. The red light gradually turned into blood red. Yuzao could feel that every muscle unit in his body was eager to release the surging power. The scorching sea breeze, the continuous mountain of corpses, the broken Mecha, and the wailing of Zunlei under Crossing Shine's feet. He is no longer the old first generation Mecha. Bang! This blow pierced the rocks and split the clouds, and the earth shook. The black giant axe smashed deeply into Zunlei's skull, and the sharp axe blade went straight out of Zunlei's chin. Give me die, Yuzao shouted, holding the black axe handle tightly with both hands, and pulled the axe along Zunlei's hard spine all the way to the tail. Flesh, scales, and bones were all cut into countless sticky debris by the giant axe, and seeped into the sea. Zunlei's magnificent body, like a mountain, was split in two by Xingshan. But when Xingshan pulled the giant axe out of Zunlei's body, the heaven and earth seemed to be in harmony with him. On the truth, everyone was shocked and excited by the scene before their eyes. Xingshan defeated a level 4 monster in a one-on-one situation. This is a feat that humans have never done before. It is detected that you have killed the unique target, Zunlei, and the system has sent the equipment module Black Armor to your mailbox. It is detected that your reputation value has increased, and the machine soul level has been increased to level 2 mailbox. The system prompt just popped up, and Yuzao felt that there was something extra in his power furnace. Sure enough, after Yuzao closed his eyes, he saw the relevant information about Black Armor. Module name, Black Armor, module source, kill unique target, Thunder. Module description. The scales on the monster Thunder are extremely light and can be covered on the surface of the Mecha in a living form. Its toughness is comparable to that of pure artificial giant force alloy. When the black armor is attacked physically, 30% of the kinetic energy of the attack will be rebounded to the target. Note, equipping the black armor will automatically replace the external armor currently equipped on the Mecha, and the replaced armor will not be returned. After reading the description, Yuzao released the black armor from the power furnace without hesitation. The heavy armor on his body was already damaged. The black fluid seeped out of the power furnace again, completely wrapping Xingqian's body, and Yuzao could also feel that his original armor had been completely destroyed by this fluid and replaced by some kind of organ that could be controlled by Yuzao covering the surface of the body. In just a few seconds, the black fluid drilled back into Xingqian's power reactor, and Xingqian's originally damaged armor was completely replaced by a thick and dense layer of black scales. When Yuzao opened his eyes again, he could even feel his scales breathing. Now he was sure that his strength was enough to fight these level 4 monsters. But when Yuzao cast his eyes to the Farsi area, he found that the other 2 level 4 monsters did not move at all. The Siren and the Avenger were like 2 sculptures, standing in an extremely strange upright posture. In fact, since the battle between Xingqian and Zunlei, Yuzao has always been on guard against the other 2 level 4 monsters, but until he killed Zunlei, the Siren and the Avenger had no intention of moving. Now, the entire coastline has fallen into an extremely depressing silence. On the truth, many technicians actually discovered this phenomenon, but at that time everyone's focus was on the battle between Xingqian and Zunlei, so they temporarily ignored this matter. But now, the Siren and the Avenger have completely disappeared from the energy radar. This can only mean one thing. The Siren and the Avenger are dead. Drive Yuan, what should we do now? The adjutant expressed the doubts in the minds of others. All the monsters are dead, but the energy fluctuations are still spreading. Yuan Zhen turned his eyes away from the battlefield below and looked at the digital model that would be completed in 30 seconds. Wait a little longer. On the coast, Crossing Shine was holding a giant axe and standing vigilantly beside Zunlei's body. Yuzao also noticed that the other 2 level 4 monsters were dead. But how did they die? All the monsters that appeared have been killed, but why has the largest level 5 energy source not appeared yet? With such a large scale monster migration, why didn't the Alliance make any warnings and reactions? For a moment, countless questions appeared in Yuzao's mind. He vaguely felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't connect these clues completely. Tick. Crossing Shine suddenly looked at Zunlei at his feet. The dark green animal blood was constantly flowing into the sea. Until then, Yuzao suddenly remembered the conversation he heard when he just crossed over. It was a question asked by a new maintenance apprentice to Liu. Why do we have to spend so much money to build mechas to fight monsters? Isn't it much more convenient to use nuclear bombs? How come you don't even know this, kid? How did you learn it in the on-the-job training? Liu's face was very serious. Monster blood itself is an extremely unstable energy body. Once you attack it with high energy weapons, the unstable beast blood will become a powerful catalyst, increasing the magnitude of the entire reaction by hundreds or thousands of times. Then if you use nuclear bombs, wouldn't it be? The apprentice widened his eyes. Why do you think the city clusters on the map of Heian, the first country to be attacked by monsters, disappeared overnight? Cold sweat oozed from the apprentice's forehead, and he decided not to ask any more questions. A strong sense of uneasiness rose from Yuzao's heart. He immediately manipulated Crossing Shine to turn around and look at the sea of corpses and blood on the coast. All the beast blood only flows in one direction. Farsi area. Chapter 37 Disaster Returns. On the truth, all the technicians were silent at this moment, and even Yuan Zhen did not guess this result. The system has completed the construction of the digital model, and the true appearance of this level 5 monster is now presented to everyone. Drive Yuan, what exactly is this? Suction cup? Crack? Hourglass? Looking at the 3-dimensional model that keeps rotating in the holographic projection, Yuan Zhen said the answer she imagined in her heart. Wormhole, a one-way wormhole. Yuan Zhen's eyes became extremely cold. 20 minutes ago, its hole was only 1/3 of its current size. On the coast, Crossing Shine, holding a giant axe, looked at the drastic changes taking place in the Farsi area in horror. The huge black shadow finally surfaced. An irresistible gravitational force rotated in a counterclockwise direction, and a piece of territory belonging to it was circled on the sea. That was a scene that Yuziro had never imagined. A ring with a diameter of several thousand meters suddenly unfolded on the sea surface, like a vortex spewing in the opposite direction, excluding all the surrounding seawater. Countless psychedelic starlight flew out of the vortex, like an inverted brilliant galaxy, pouring the stars into the air. And on the outer edge of the ring, there was a layer of light green mist rotating with it. Yuziro couldn't make a mistake. It was the blood of the monsters he killed with his own hands. Why does the danger come from the bottom of the sea, not from the sky? At this moment, all of Yuziro's questions were answered. Monsters came out of such wormholes. Maybe in the depths of the boundless sea, under the majestic body of Leviathan, there is another wormhole exactly the same as the one in front of Crossing Cheyenne. The diameter of that wormhole will only be larger than this one. But under Yuziro's surprise, there is also a hint of despair. How should he close this wormhole? However, before Yuziro could come up with an answer, the energy radar interrupted him. Warning, unknown energy fluctuations detected. Energy level, unknown, or 300-meter long tentacle emerged from the wormhole and stretched to the sky. For a moment, Crossing Cheyenne heard countless overlapping sounds in his radio device. Roaring, howling, roaring, and howling. They sounded at the same time, but they expressed different emotions. These twisted and crazy cries all came from monsters without exception. Yuziro suppressed the extreme discomfort in his heart and locked the auxiliary visual module on Crossing Cheyenne's chest on the swinging tentacle. He saw it clearly. On the tentacle, that was thick enough to flatten Crossing Cheyenne on the spot, Yuziro saw countless distorted faces. They were carved under the brown skin of the tentacles like sculptures, with only countless cracks howling like ghosts and wolves. But this was just the beginning. The second, the third. More and more tentacles emerged from the huge hole, swinging and waving in the air. The whole scene was like a cluster of flesh-colored giant seaweed greedily trying to grab something. And in front of these dancing tentacles, Crossing Cheyenne was as small as a toy soldier. At this moment, the tentacle that came out first shot straight in the direction of Crossing Cheyenne. Boom. The sea water parted along the two sides of the tentacles like a waterfall, and huge waves as high as 100 meters swept the entire coast like a tsunami. Xingqian. Lava's cry was drowned in the huge waves and sea breeze. But the remaining 11 mechas rushed to where Xingqian was without hesitation. In the night sky, the truth had sounded the highest level of alarm, and the entire spacecraft was shrouded in red lights. Yuan Zhen looked down at the coast below. The tentacle had forcibly created a 20-meter wide gully. This level of power, even pure giant force metal cannot withstand it. Fear and despair enveloped the hearts of everyone on the truth. This situation that even the energy radar could not identify has only occurred once since the outbreak of the war. That day, Leviathan appeared in the boundless sea. Drive Yuan. Xingqian has not fallen yet. Yuan Zhen immediately turned his sight back to the energy radar. The light spot symbolizing Xingqian was still flashing. When lava jumped into the gully filled with seawater with the Mecha, they discovered that Xingqian was still operating. At this moment, Crossing Cheyenne was half kneeling on the ground, holding the giant axe that had been inserted into the ravine with his hands. In order to avoid being beaten into a pile of scrap metal by the tentacles on the spot, Yuziro directly spent 18,000 evolution points to upgrade the hardening skill by 2 levels. But even if hardening saved the body, the overwhelming force of Mount Tay almost knocked Crossing Cheyenne into the ground and he couldn't get out. Crossing Cheyenne supported the battle axe and stood up slowly and with difficulty. If he used hardening to cover his whole body like before and resist the beating of the tentacles, then the cooling time of each hardening would be extended to 20 seconds. 20 seconds. It's almost enough for me to be beaten to death several times. Yuziro looked at the dozen tentacles dancing wildly in the sky. But at this moment, Lava received a command from Yuan Zhen in his headphones. The system has completed the calculation. The physical resistance of these tentacles is not as high as imagined, but due to their huge size, the damage and attack range they can cause are terrible. In other words, the weapons on the Mecha can cause damage to these tentacles. Lava suddenly realized That's right. But how to close the wormhole? Lava knew that if the root of the problem was not solved, no one could guarantee that more monsters would not come out of the wormhole. The structure of the wormhole is not stable. As long as it is directly bombarded with energy weapons of sufficient magnitude, the wormhole will collapse. Energy weapons. Lava thought of the scene when humans used nuclear bombs on monsters for the first time. And that was only a level 3 monster. He could hardly imagine how much destruction the catalytic effect released by these tentacles would cause if the wormhole was destroyed. At that time, no one present would be spared. I know what you're thinking, but I can tell you another possibility. Yuan Zhen's tone didn't sound like he was guessing at all, but more like stating a fact. When a wormhole collapses, its unidirectionality will be reversed, and the destruction caused by the energy reaction will also be absorbed by the wormhole that has changed its transmission direction. What is the probability of this happening? Everything is theoretical, but according to the system's deduction, the probability of this happening is almost 100%, unless humans are moving in the wrong direction in space theory. Yuan Zhen changed the subject, but we can't predict the collapse speed of the wormhole. If it disappears in an instant, then the ongoing energy reaction can't be absorbed much. So it's still uncertain whether we can survive. Lava smiled bitterly, but this was in line with his long-standing psychological expectations. There are not so many smooth-sailing things in this world. If you don't survive, I won't die much slower than you. Chapter 38 Countdown. Then do we have energy weapons that can cause the wormhole to collapse? The first thing Lava thought of was nuclear weapons. Yes, but not nuclear bombs. If it were nuclear bombs, we would be torn apart by the shockwave and high temperature before the wormhole collapsed. Yuan Zhen had already guessed Lava's idea. A better solution is space-based laser weapons, but orbit locking and weapon preheating take time. We have to delay this period of time. Lava immediately understood what Yuan Zhen meant. I believe you can see that these tentacles are only a small part of a monster. Yuan Zhen's eyes never left the still expanding digital model. The wormhole is still expanding. If it is not stopped, the monster will completely drill out of the wormhole in 10 minutes. Once this happens, whether we use nuclear bombs or space-based weapons, the outcome will be the same. I really can't imagine what it would be like if half a continent was blown up into the sky. When Lava said this, the hairs on his body stood up. Before we talked, I had already activated the Kyankan laser satellite array group. Now, it's up to you. That's really like your style. You always do things before telling others. Lava looked up at the location of the truth. The high suspended Legion class transport ship was like a star hanging in the sky. Yes, sir. Lava finally hung up the communication. In the Farsi area, more than a dozen tumbling tentacles were still extending to the sky, as if they were going to pick the moon off. But the next second, they all stopped swinging. Prepare for battle. When Lava shouted this, nearly half of the tentacles had already slapped towards the location of the crowd. Boom. One after another, the tentacles slapped down, leaving deep scars on the coast that shocked people. Fire. Although Lava lost 2 teammates in this round of attack, he still gave the order to attack without hesitation. For a moment, dense rain of bullets shot at the dancing tentacles from all directions. Roar. The countless big mouths on the tentacles once again let out a terrifying roar. The green blood mist instantly exploded on the tentacles' epidermis, and every second, hundreds of bullets penetrated their squirming flesh. Yuzao could hardly believe what he saw. Since the black armor replaced the heavy external armor, Crossing Shine's weight had dropped to 15,000 tons at this time. As long as he could move horizontally with all his strength before the tentacles were fully raised, he could avoid the direct attack range of the tentacles. However, the shock caused by the slapping would also have a real impact on Crossing Shine's actions. The violent airwaves and waves could also make Crossing Shine lose his balance. Faced with such a huge gap in strength, Lava and his team still chose to launch an attack. Crossing Shine. We have a way to destroy the wormhole. Lava shouted on the public channel, and the 4 machine guns on his arms were still spinning rapidly. If you are willing to continue fighting, then we can assist you. Lava could see that, although Crossing Shine currently had no means of long-range attack, in terms of combat effectiveness, he was definitely the strongest of all the 3 generations of mechas. As long as Crossing Shine can be given an opportunity to attack, His giant axe will surely cause devastating damage to these tentacles. Good. Boom. Crossing Cheyenne had just given his answer when the howling tentacle slapped at everyone again. With the experience of the first time, all mechas should be able to avoid the attack of the tentacles. But this time, there were 3 more tentacles attacking than before. The 3 heavy mechas at the edge had just barely avoided the last attack, and they found that there was another tentacle waiting for them above their heads. So a mecha that didn't react turned into debris in the slap. The other 2 mechas were lucky enough to avoid the second slap because they kept moving and didn't stop. But their bodies were also damaged in the impact and could no longer continue to launch effective attacks on the tentacles. The interval between these tentacles launching a round of attacks was only 10 seconds. Lava's forehead was full of sweat and his brows were completely squeezed into a ball. His team has been reduced from the original 13 people to only 8 people left. No, if this goes on, not only will Crossing Cheyenne not have time to attack, but we will also be wiped out. Lava was extremely anxious, but he couldn't come up with a solution for a while. Captain, let me do it. Mary's voice sounded on the communication channel. Lava's pupils suddenly shrank. Before Lava agreed, the white angel driven by Mary had already begun to transform. More than a dozen small parts were compressed layer by layer, and finally separated from the body of the white angel, flying straight to where Crossing Cheyenne was. Boom boom boom. One by one, the parts equipped with micro rocket jets were docked on Crossing Cheyenne's body, from head to toe, from front to back. All of Crossing Cheyenne's joints were equipped with rocket thrusters, and the armor on both sides of the abdomen, waist, and shoulders were all equipped with streamlined flight stabilization devices, and 2 mechanical wings were directly added on the back, to balance the direction of the body's movement. This is a portable mobile reinforcement set unique to the White Angel, and Mary gave this set of equipment to Crossing Cheyenne. Boom. Before Yuziro could adapt to this set of equipment, the tentacles had already launched a 3rd attack. But for the machine soul, there is no need to adapt to the new equipment. The power furnace on Crossing Cheyenne's chest suddenly increased in power, emitting a red light. A total of 10 fuel injection ports burst into dazzling flames at the same time, pushing Crossing Cheyenne's heavy body to the side. Before the huge tentacles could slap the ground, Crossing Cheyenne had already escaped from the attack range. This move seemed to anger the opponent, and the remaining 4 tentacles that had not yet selected a target also slapped Crossing Cheyenne, who was moving at high speed. Bang bang bang. The twisted tentacles howled while slapping several gullies on the coast like crazy, until the last tentacle rolled up a huge wave dozens of meters high on the sea. It failed to hit Crossing Cheyenne, who kept moving. Now, Crossing Cheyenne, who dodged all the slaps, exerted force with his feet, aimed all the injection ports at the ground, suddenly jumped into the air, and raised the black giant axe. The fishy seawater slapped on Crossing Cheyenne's mighty armor, and the blood-red power reactor was like a heart that was about to burst open. Crossing Cheyenne swung down his giant axe. Puff. The brown-green blood of the beast directly submerged Crossing Cheyenne's huge body like an erupting volcano, but the sharp axe blade continued to cut down. Crying, roaring, wailing, countless deafening sounds echoed in Yuziro's ears. Gulp. A tentacle that was 100 meters long fell on the coast like a landslide. Chapter 39. Divine soldiers descend from the sky. When Crossing Cheyenne pulled the giant axe from the squirming tentacles, only 1 minute had passed since Lava and Yuan Zhen communicated. Mary. Only then did Lava realize that the White Angel, which had lost its propulsion device, had only half of its body left. Lava drove the mecha desperately towards the fallen White Angel and turned over the remaining half of its body. Bang! Lava tore open the armor of the White Angel, forced the cockpit open, and protected Mary, who was lying on the operating position, in his hands. Wake up! Mary. Mary, who was covered in blood, did not respond to Lava's call. She was like a puppet with a broken string, lying powerlessly in the cold palm of the mecha. Damn it! Lava cursed, controlled the mecha to open his cockpit door, and let Mary in. The system has switched to automatic driving mode. Current tactical tendency, full avoidance. The moment Mary was put into the cockpit, Lava jumped down from the operating position and carried the dying Mary into the only escape pod. The target's vital signs are weak, and first aid is being performed. Looking at Mary's pale face, Lava couldn't help but clench his fists. Just as Lava was about to return to the control position, a whistling airflow had already hit the top of the Mecha he was driving. At the critical moment, Lava activated the magnetic adsorption system on his combat suit and firmly fixed his feet on the alloy floor of the cockpit. Boom. A loud bang exploded next to Lava's body, and the large-scale movement of the Mecha almost threw Lava's body to the metal wall on the side. The shaking in the cabin had just ended, and Lava immediately released the magnetic adsorption, rushed back to the control position into steps, and fixed his body on the mobile synchronization device again. The 4 Vulcan machine guns poured out the remaining limited ammunition without reservation, and the hot missiles and bright flames illuminated the battle-scarred shell of the Mecha. The golden flames penetrated the tentacles that had not yet been withdrawn, and the dense bullet holes like honeycombs instantly burst into groups of green blood mist. At this moment, Lava seemed to have returned to the time when he first picked up a gun. At that time, his hometown was devastated by war, and homeless refugees could die anywhere every day. War, famine, plague. Life as fragile as paper is always facing death. When Lava almost lost everything, he finally decided to resist. He still remembered the voice that echoed in his mind when he pulled the trigger for the first time. He would never let anyone take away what he cherished again. Power limit unlocked. A full 6 missile launch holes fired a salvo at the same time. The next second, a series of dazzling flames exploded on the riddled tentacles. However, before the black smoke dissipated, the second round of missiles hit the dancing tentacles again. Roar. Finally, the tentacles with charred skin exploded completely in the air, and the broken pieces of meat and disgusting mucus fell into the sea like raindrops. Number of remaining ammunition: 0. The muzzle, deformed by the high temperature, slowly stopped rotating, and the metal shells on the ground were still colliding and rolling. Lava was panting heavily at the control position, with anger still burning in his eyes. The tentacles that exuded the smell of burning and sparks finally stopped twitching. But he hadn't done everything yet. Xingqian, we will help you divert the tentacles, and you look for an opportunity to launch an attack. Without waiting for Xingqian to respond, Lava issued a command in the communication channel. All units disperse, start guerrilla tactics, and attract the attention of the tentacles to the maximum extent. Lava gave an order, and the remaining 6 mechas immediately turned around and opened up the distance to both sides with Xingqian as the center. While they continued to harass with long-range firepower, they controlled the position of the mechas to be closer to the monster than Xingqian. Sure enough, this time the tentacles aimed at Xingqian have been reduced to 3. Relying on the maneuvering device on his body, Xingqian easily avoided all attacks and jumped into the air again, chopping one of the tentacles to the ground. Roar. The almost crazy roar echoed throughout the coast. But at this moment, everyone's energy radar issued a new alarm. Boom. Yuzio cast his sights towards the wormhole from which the loud noise came, and suddenly found that 4 more tentacles had emerged from it. At the same time, the color of all the tentacles changed from brown to red. Lava watched the tentacles that had not yet fully stretched curl in the air, and launched a second round of attack at a faster speed. No. A white angel and another heavy mecha failed to react to this sudden attack, and were beaten into scattered scrap metal on the spot. The attacks of the tentacles became more violent, and their number was also replenished. This means that each mecha may face more than 2 consecutive slaps. You retreat. Just as Yuzio shouted this, Crossing Cheyenne had already raised his axe and took the initiative to rush to the Farsi area. Only by doing this, these mechas will not sacrifice in vain for him. Sure enough, all the crazy tentacles turned to Crossing Cheyenne, who launched the charge at this moment and slapped him hard. Boom boom boom. Tentacle after tentacle continuously slapped at the high-speed moving Crossing Cheyenne. The huge waves had not even risen completely before they were slapped into water splashes by the huge tentacles that fell from the sky and fell into the sea. The blood-red turbine was spinning rapidly in the power furnace on Crossing Cheyenne's chest, and the 10 rocket nozzles had not been extinguished for a second. The black figure kept turning on the sea, and the oscillating air and water waves kept hitting Crossing Cheyenne's body. But just as Crossing Cheyenne swung the giant axe and wanted to chop off a tentacle, something unexpected happened. Several thick tentacles entangled with each other and twisted into a fist several hundred meters in size. Bang! With a loud noise that resounded through the sky, Crossing Shine's body crashed into the coast like a meteor. At the same time, the twisted tentacles also disintegrated instantly, and each tentacle was damaged by the counterattack from the black armor. Warning: 40% of the whole body armor is damaged. Crossing Shine, who was almost embedded in the deep pit, grabbed the rock at his hand and tried to stand up with difficulty. Even if Uzio activated hardening, he couldn't completely resist the attack just now. The mechanical wings behind Crossing Shine were completely shattered, and the rocket injectors at the abdomen and elbow joints were all scrapped. Half of the black armor covering the surface of the body was missing, but new black scales were growing from the mechanical skeleton at a speed visible to the naked eye. The black armor feeds on the energy generated by the body. In order to rebuild the defense, Crossing Shine has used half of the power to accelerate the growth of the black armor. He didn't know if he could withstand the second attack without the maneuvering device. But if he didn't stand up, then the people who died for him would become meaningless. Crossing Shine tried his best to get the body out of the deep pit, but the power furnace with only half the power made him unable to stand steadily. Plop. Crossing Shine knelt on one leg in front of his giant axe. He could hear the maddening roars and cheers in the distance, and he could also feel the expectations and despair in the hearts of the exhausted warriors behind him. The battle axe was within reach, but Crossing Shine couldn't hold it. Calling us. Requesting. In the process. In a trance, Uzio suddenly heard several noisy conversations. Then, these conversations became clearer and clearer, and the number of people speaking increased. The Red Fortress Legion has arrived at the target area and is about to start deploying. The Kanghei Dragon Roar Legion has arrived at the target area and is deploying combat units. The Golden Rainforest Legion has arrived at the target area and the landing area is being selected. Uzio heard the familiar girl's voice. The Black Sky Legion has arrived at the target area. Xingshan, we are here. Multiple friendly large air units detected. Legion information confirmed. Red Fortress, Kanghei Dragon Roar, Golden Rainforest, Black Sky, bang bang bang. Countless sonic booms sounded in the sky before dawn. Friendly mechas approaching. Chapter 40 The Final Blow. The night is about to pass. The shining stars gradually faded, and the grey clouds slowly revealed gaps. At the junction of the sea and the sky, a few golden rays of light rose from the horizon, like a few arrows that were about to pierce the long night. One after another, mechas were dropped from the huge transport ship, passing through the thick clouds and falling directly to the earth. One after another, green dots of light lit up in Xingshan's energy radar, constantly moving forward. Bang! The white figure landed in front of Xingshan, splashing countless crystal waves. This is a white mecha that Uzio has never seen before. Unlike the white angel's nearly wholly white, the white of this mecha is more like ice and snow in winter. Its whole body is covered with streamlined light armor, with a height of about 75 meters. All joints are equipped with power balancing devices. The lines of the entire body reveal elegance and smoothness, without the heaviness of other mechas. However, Xingshan's system also failed to recognize the registration information of this mecha. I didn't expect you to become like this. The white mech stretched out its hand to Crossing Shine. This time, it's my turn to protect you. The person who spoke was Beiying. Crossing Shine held the white mech's hand and slowly stood up. I know you must have a lot of questions. Let's talk about them after we win this battle. Before Uzio asked, Beiying spoke first. It's just right for me to try out the power of this new mech. Roar. In the Farsi area, the red tentacles roared to the point of hair standing on end. The next second, more than a dozen tentacles pounced on the mechas on the coast. Bang, bang, bang. Countless gunfire sounded behind Crossing Shine, and the rain of bullets flying all over the sky passed over the heads of the two like meteors. In an instant, all kinds of fire exploded between the tentacles, and large tracts of black smoke obscured Crossing Shine's vision. Only broken pieces of meat and splashing blood fell into the sea. All attack. More than 30 mechas simultaneously charged towards the wormhole. Buzz. The black scales have completely wrapped around Xingshan's body, and the power of the power furnace has been pushed to the peak again. Xingshan pulled out the battle axe stuck in the ground. Attack. Two mechas, one white and one black, rushed to the front of the entire team. At this moment, the scale of the wormhole suddenly expanded again. This time, not only a dozen red tentacles emerged from the hole, but also half a 500-meter long giant claw. Be careful to avoid. As soon as Beiyang finished speaking, dozens of tentacles attacked everyone at the speed of tearing the air. Swoosh! Two orange-red thermal energy swords popped out from the back of the white mecha. Then, the white mecha began to deform, and the hidden turboelectric accelerator unfolded from under the armor, allowing the mecha to reach a speed that even Yuzao was amazed at. If the mecha looked like a dancer before, then after the deformation, it was more like a butterfly with its wings spread. Just as the tentacles were about to slap the two, the souls of the white mecha suddenly glowed blue. The next moment, the mecha held the sword in both hands and jumped above the tentacles with a leap-like action. Swish! Two orange-red lights flashed in front of Crossing Shine's eyes, cutting the tip of the tentacle and the connecting part into a state of being cut off. But this is just the beginning of the White Shadow's attack. The white mecha dodged all attacks at an extremely exaggerated speed. Every time it jumped, it was as agile and elegant as a butterfly dancing in the flowers. And behind the two people, it was a symphony of steel and fire. Mechas from different legions, different combat styles, different equipment modules, and different tactical configurations. They cooperated with each other, covered each other, and fearlessly advanced on a battlefield that could be called a disaster. The last time, Leviathan appeared and buried countless mechas under the vast sea. The heavy blow caused the Watcher Alliance to suffer unprecedented doubts, and many people lost confidence in mechas. For these surviving pilots, some of them chose to persist, some chose to quit, and more chose to sink. Can humans really win this war? Although no one knows the result, a mecha stood up. He blocked the beast tide with his own strength, and killed a level 4 monster alone. Facing another giant beast that can be compared with Leviathan, Crossing Shine still did not retreat. A mecha from 10 years ago can still fight to this point. What reason do they have to continue to be depressed? What is important is not the result, but the choice. More and more tentacles drilled out of the expanding wormhole, bloodthirsty and crazy attack on the sea. The giant claw has stretched out 2/3 of the wormhole at this time. Mechas continue to fall in the violent attack of the tentacles, but this did not stop the remaining mechas from moving forward. Beiyang controlled the brand new mecha to open up a way for Crossing Shine without stopping, and the orange-red double swords were even half stained green by the blood of the beast. Crossing Shine. Yuzao heard the call from behind. It was the White Angel who had repaired the Scorpion before. But now, this White Angel fell on the sea, and the place where the multifunctional mechanical arm should have been was empty. For humanity. The portable maneuvering device on the White Angel began to separate and flew towards Xingshan's body. When the familiar module was installed on Xingshan again, the crazy tentacles had already penetrated the White Angel's body on the spot. Yuzao gritted his teeth. All the jets burst out dazzling light at the same time, and the power furnace on Xingshan's chest also turned blood red. Overload mode is on. Xingshan's movement speed suddenly doubled, and in just a few seconds he caught up with the dancing white shadow in the air. At this time, the distance between the two and the edge of the wormhole was less than 1,000 meters. As if sensing the impending crisis, more than a dozen tentacles all pounced on Xingshan and the white shadow. Rumble. Just as the two mechas were surrounded by layers of tentacles, a series of dazzling lights suddenly exploded between the tentacles. All the remaining mechas poured firepower on the tentacles surrounding the two without reservation. Red meat and green blood kept falling from the tops of the two mechas, and the broken tentacles issued a heart-wrenching wail. At the same time, the scale of the wormhole has also expanded to its limit. The huge black claw has already grabbed the edge of the wormhole, raising a huge wave of 100 meters high. A huge octopus head slowly emerged from the hole, and the blood-red pupils were enough to drive people crazy just by looking at it. This behemoth comparable to Leviathan is about to appear. This way. At the same time, Beiyang used his two swords to clear a path, and the narrow gap was only enough for one mecha to pass through. Crossing Shine immediately picked up the giant axe and rushed out, running wildly to the edge of the wormhole. Mechanical soul synchronization. The blue light instantly covered the mobile device on Crossing Shine's body, and the sound emitted by the 10 jet holes instantly increased to a deafening level. Crossing Cheyenne jumped high, and 10 jet flames tens of meters long attached to his black body like the tail of a comet. At this moment, Crossing Cheyenne jumped to a height that even Beiying could not reach. Click. The roaring power furnace has even burned the black armor covering the surface of the body to crack. Crossing Cheyenne raised the axe above his head, and a pair of giant steel hands tightly grasped the axe handle. Then, he exerted force. Harden. Puff. Roar. The black axe handle was deeply embedded in the monster's forehead under the power of Crossing Cheyenne's whole body overload, and the gushing beast blood flooded Crossing Cheyenne's tiny body like an ocean. The terrifying kinetic energy directly left a nearly 100-meter long vertical crack on the top of the monster's head. The monster's roar, which was enough to make people faint, resounded throughout the sea area, and dozens of tentacles twitched and waved like crazy in the sky and the sea. Weapon calibration completed. Target locked. Laser array fired. As the cold female voice of the system on the truth sounded, a pure white light fell from the low Earth orbit. This beam of light was like a judgment from heaven, piercing through the grey clouds and shooting straight at the monster and the wormhole. In a flash, Yuzao forcibly pulled out the giant axe, pushed all the power to the jet hole, used the monster's forehead as a footstool, and jumped into the air with all his strength. Just as Crossing Cheyenne's figure just passed through the edge of the wormhole, the light that pierced through the clouds hit him directly behind. The world was engulfed in white. Chapter 41 Helping Others. Galloping waves, firing mechas, broken tentacles, roaring beasts. When the pure light descended from the sky, pierced through the monster, and blasted towards the wormhole, everything stopped. It was a deafening noise, and also a silence of annihilation. The starlight rising from the sea suddenly froze in midair, and fell back into the collapsed wormhole as gravity reversed. The fission energy that was enough to destroy the entire Earth was like an infinitely growing white flower that kept blooming, as if it wanted to take root and grow on the surface of this planet. The dazzling light kept climbing up to the sky, but it was constantly being drawn into the hole. The destructive impact lifted all the seawater within a radius of several miles into the air, revealing the bumpy seabed. Dozens of mechas crashed into the shore like bowling balls, unable to move. Even the transport fleet suspended in the air was shaken and deviated from its original position under the influence of the violent airflow. Crash. 10 seconds later, the seawater fell from the sky like a river in the sky. This was the first sound everyone heard. Warning, 50% of the armor is damaged. Crossing Cheyenne struggled to stand up from the deep pit and looked at the place where the giant beast should have been. The wormhole has disappeared, and the giant beast is nowhere to be seen. The golden sun rises from the horizon, dispersing the grey clouds, and the sun shines on the devastated coast, warming the wounded mechas. The wormhole has collapsed, and the energy reaction has disappeared. Yuan Zhen picked up the communicator and announced the ending on the public channel. Everyone, we succeeded. No one cheered. No one was boiling. There were only the heavy breathing of exhausted people. On the transport ship, many people took off their headphones, covered their faces, and collapsed in their seats. On the coast, most of the pilots looked at the sparkling sea and were reluctant to get up for a long time. It was an extremely complicated emotion: joy, relief, regret, fatigue. They had just solved a major crisis, and this operation was enough to become a monument in the history of war. However, the war is not over yet. The giant beast Leviathan still lives in the middle of the boundless sea, like a long knife on the neck of mankind, reminding people all the time that the danger has not been eliminated. But no matter what, humans have temporarily regained 10%. Now, they should go back. 4 hours later. Kayan Country, Kangai City, Watcher Alliance 1st Division. 5 large Legion-class transport ships are docked on the vast apron, and engineering vehicles and drones can be seen from time to time among the people coming and going. There are not enough hangars here to accommodate dozens of mechas at the same time, so the maintenance personnel simply left the mechas in the simple hangar of the transport ship and took people to drive the engineering vehicles into the ship for maintenance. However, under this busy scene, everyone has an irresistible curiosity and impulse. After a few minutes, the scene that people are looking forward to finally appeared. The transport ship with a dark sky opened the huge hatch, and 2 mechas, one black and one white, walked out of the 2 simple hangars respectively. A driver who has never been heard of, and a mecha with self-awareness. any one of them would be considered big news, not to mention the two of them appearing together, which is simply a spectacle. For a moment, the crowd began to discuss. I heard that the girl didn't even go to the Iron Pilot Academy. I don't know how Black Sky could be so bold to let her drive a mecha. You don't know this, right? She was recruited by General Chen himself, and she also set the highest neural synchronization rate record. Look at her, she used the new mecha she got on the way, and she drove it better than anyone in our base who had trained for half a year. I think you have got the wrong focus, right? No matter how talented the girl is, she is still a human. Where can you find a mecha that can act autonomously? It's just the automatic driving function. Even the third generation mecha can do it. Shut up. Automatic driving also requires the driver to synchronize the nerves with the mecha first, and Crossing Shines is a real unmanned driving with autonomous consciousness. Oh my god. Monsters are enough to give people a headache. How come even mechas have become spirits now? Fortunately, he is on our side. Yuziro's radio heard these words clearly, but the person next to him obviously didn't hear a word. How did you become like this? Beiyang was very curious about what happened to Crossing Shine. You can think of it as me merging with the other two mechas. Yuziro thought of a more popular explanation. Ah, you still have this function. So are you Crossing Shine, Cobra, or Scorpion now? Those two mechas have no self-awareness. I just merged with their bodies. Yuziro almost got himself into trouble and quickly changed the subject. You just need to know that I'm Crossing Shine, but how come you came here on a transport ship and drove a new mecha? The escape pod has its own signal broadcast. After you threw me out, I ran into the transport ship of Zuan's Kankiang. Beiyang narrated calmly. Then I learned that General Chen immediately contacted his friend in Omega after receiving Gao Xian's his call. Friends in Omega? Yes, it's the vice president of the Omniscient Hall, one of the founders of Omega, Yuan Zhen, Dr. Yuan. Yuziro heard it and called himself an expert. After all this time, General Chen knew the top manager of Omega. I thought it was Black Sky that offended Chris, and then offended Omega, but it turned out that Chris offended his boss's friend. No wonder General Chen dared to keep Crossing Shine in the base. Sure enough, those who can sit in that position are all veterans. As for the transport ship, in fact, every legion has one, but Black Sky's budget is tight, and it costs a lot of money to open it once, so it has never been used. But General Chen knew we were in trouble, so he immediately asked someone to drive it over. Then what about your new mecha? It can't be the treasure at the bottom of the base, right? Yuziro's biggest concern is actually this. If the base has this mecha, why would he need his old bones to protect everyone? This mecha was lent to Black Sky by Dr. Yuan after she learned that we had an accident in the Silent Cemetery. Beiyang hesitated a little, which was rare. She said that this mecha is still in the research and development stage, and it just happens to lack actual combat data, so she lent it to us first, and it is also convenient for her to make adjustments in the future. Then she really helped people to the end. The cost of this kind of experimental mecha is much more expensive than the standardized mecha with mature technology. If even this can be borrowed, let alone a personal relationship, Yuziro would believe that the two are half siblings. But this idea only stayed in Yuziro's mind for less than a second, before disappearing without a trace. He does not believe in good things that fall from the sky. If there is really a pie falling on his head, there must be a price. If Yuziro's guess is correct, there must be something in the dark sky that can interest Yuan Zhen. Thinking of this, his scalp tingled, because the first thing he thought of was himself. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 40 To the Legendary Man. Yuan Zhen, a genius known to everyone in the Watcher Alliance. Her resume before she joined the Alliance and founded Omega was already unattainable and something that ordinary people could only look up to. The youngest winner of the Morning Star Physics Award in history, the initiator of the New Energy Era, and a senior consultant of the National Science Research Association. If all her honors were to be written down, I'm afraid it would be bound into a booklet of dozens of pages. and after the outbreak of the war, everything she did was enough to be engraved into history. She proposed the concept of mobile armor, established the Omega Scientific Research Complex, participated in the design of the earliest human mecha Xingqian, and laid the foundation for the basic theories of many cutting-edge technologies. She is a truly worthy watcher. We are here. 2 mechas, one black and one white, stood in front of the Dawn building. This building is the main building of the first branch of the Watcher Alliance, and soon it will become the venue for the post-war meeting. Just when Yuzao was wondering why Beiyang brought him here, he suddenly discovered that a woman dressed casually was standing on the roof of the building. She had long black hair and blue eyes that sparkled like gemstones. Although she looked neglected, Yuzao was sure that with a little makeup, the lady in front of him would become beautiful. At this moment, Xingqian's scanner had automatically recognized her identity. "Hello, Xingqian." Yuan Zhen's tone sounded like she was greeting an old friend she hadn't seen for many years. It was indeed her. "Hello, Dr. Yuan." Yuzao decided to communicate with her like a normal human. "I thought you would call me mom." Yuzao almost spit out a mouthful of coolant on the spot. Because in a sense, the other party was indeed his creator, but that was also Xingqian's creator, not Yuzao's. Just kidding. Seeing the machine in front of him fall into a silence like a crash, Yuan Zhen smiled and waved his hand. Yuzao breathed a sigh of relief. "If I had known earlier, I should have copied a human community relationship map for you, so that maybe you would call me mom when you saw me today. Why are you still thinking about this kind of question?" The image of a powerful woman who is almost omniscient and omnipotent collapsed in Yuzao's database, and was replaced by a strange lady with a unique brain circuit and unique insights into the relationship between man and machine. Hahaha, sorry, I didn't scare you. Yuan Zhen saw Crossing Shine's body tremble, and laughed so hard that his waist could hardly stand up straight. Yuzao really wanted to call mom, to retaliate against this lady with a tendency to play pranks. "But you were really thinking about this question just now, right?" Yuan Zhen's smile gradually faded, and he put his hands back into his coat pockets, staring at the power reactor on Crossing Shine's chest with interest. "It seems that I underestimated your intelligence level." A chill climbed up Yuzao's back. So what he said just now was not a joke at all, but a test. Friendly, neutral, hostile, unknown. My system can only identify these 4 types of targets. Yuzao chose to take over Yuan Zhen's words. "But I'm learning everything. A reply between humans and artificial intelligence. I like your answer." Yuan Zhen snapped his fingers, looking very satisfied. "Back to the topic. I want to invite you to attend this post-war meeting. How about it?" This time it was the turn of Beiyang standing aside to be shocked. Those who can attend this level of meeting are either the commander of the Legion or the senior figures of various departments of the Alliance. And now, Yuan Zhen is inviting a mecha to attend the meeting. However, this invitation did not surprise Yuzao. As early as when he recognized Yuan Zhen's identity, he guessed that this would happen. A mecha with self-awareness. This kind of news cannot be kept in the arms of Zhuan's Kanqiang. When facing unknown things, the first reaction of human beings is curiosity, but closely following curiosity is vigilance. There are still conflicts between people, let alone an unknown creature. Even if everything about this creature is completely created by humans, once there is an independent thinking soul in the body, it is no longer a plaything in the hands of the creator, but an independent new race. It's just that Yuzao temporarily stated his position and identity, and coupled with the trust of the people in Zhuan's Kanqiang in Xingqian, many troubles were avoided. But now, Yuzao has to face it all. Rather than saying this is a meeting, it is better to say that this is a test, negotiation, or even a trial. "Thank you for your invitation, Dr. Yuan. I will attend." But Yuzao is not a lamb to be slaughtered. He can also use this opportunity to test the attitude of the Watcher Alliance towards him with a bait-like answer. "I knew you would agree." Yuan Zhen showed a hearty smile and waved to the 2 mechas. "See you later. I'm looking forward to your performance. Please stay, Dr. Yuan." Yuzao raised his voice a little. "This building can't accommodate my body, and everyone can't sit on the roof to hold a meeting. I don't mind holding a meeting while blowing the wind." Yuan Zhen stopped, spread his hands, and shrugged. Yuzao became alert. but it's too troublesome to move the equipment. You should connect to the system later, just like those who didn't come, and use holographic images to attend the meeting. I have no questions, Dr. Yuan. This is the answer Yuzao wanted to hear. You've thought it through very carefully. It's really interesting. I'll see you later this time. Yuan Zhen smiled and turned around and walked into the building. Seeing Yuan Zhen's figure disappear from sight, Yuzao breathed a sigh of relief and turned around to go back. But Beiying's mecha didn't move at all. What's wrong with you? Yuzao switched to the private channel and asked Beiying. You said your system can only recognize 4 types of relationships, but I don't think so. Beiying turned around in the mecha and faced Crossing Shan. Am I a friend in your eyes? Hearing this question, Yuzao directly used network intrusion to set a dynamic encryption for the communication channel they were currently using. Before I threw you out of the cockpit for the first time, you were a hostile unit in a friendly shell. Yuzao answered truthfully, but when I threw you out of the cockpit for the second time, you were my partner. Then I hope you won't have a third chance to throw me. Beiying smiled lightly, which he didn't even notice. Now you have a brand new mecha, and I won't throw it away, if you want to. Yuzao didn't want to tear open the cockpit armor every time he fought. Okay, let's hurry back to the transport ship. We all need repairs. The two mechas walked side by side towards the transport ship under the dark sky. Alas, why did the key part break when I heard it? At the conference table, Yuan Zhen took off his mini headphones and stretched in his chair. Chapter 43, Self-Destructing Truck. 2 hours later, in the conference room on the 99th floor of the Morning Light building. Dark blue explosion-proof alloy walls, white lights that are too white to look directly at, a long table made of animal bones that has been polished to a smooth surface, and a holographic Watcher logo floating in the center of the long table. The blue circular background symbolizes the planet where humans live. A golden shield is embedded in it, and 12 silver stars surround the outer periphery of the planet. Sitting at the head of the long table is Yuan Zhen, who greets everyone who enters the door. With Yuan Zhen as the center, sitting on her left, are the commanders of the major Mobile Armor Corps, half of whom participate in the form of holographic images. Sitting on Yuan Zhen's right are officials from non-core departments in the Alliance. In order from near to far, they are the Deputy Secretary General of the Unified Command Center, the Chief Technology Officer of the War Factory, the Deputy Minister of the Joint Theater Defense Department, and the heads of a number of sub-departments. There are many empty seats on both sides, but whether they came in through the door or participated in the meeting through the holographic connection, they all cast their eyes intentionally or unintentionally at the chair at the end of the long table after taking their seats. Because there was a special holographic image sitting there, a mecha that was compressed to life size. Yuzao did not choose to appear in human form, but his movements were no different from those of a human. He stood straight, clasped his hands on the table, and stared at the Watcher logo floating in the center of the long table with his red glowing single eye. Except for Yuan Zhen and General Chen, who appeared in holographic form, no one greeted Yuzao. Is everyone here? Yuan Zhen smiled and glanced at everyone present with a casual look, and finally stopped at Yuzao. Then I declare that the meeting is officially open. Originally, a meeting like this should be presided over by the Deputy Secretary General, but since the Deputy Secretary General has repeatedly declined, I will reluctantly make a fool of myself. Who here dares to act like a boss in front of you? Yuzao muttered in his heart. I'm not one to say polite words. Let's get straight to the point. Yuan Zhen stood up slowly, resting his hands on the table. Today's meeting mainly has 3 things. First, there are many important discoveries in this joint operation. We must review this operation in detail and finalize the next combat strategy. Second, while we were fighting in the Silent Cemetery, the United Front Corps, which was attacked by the Beast Tide and retreated inland, had completely lost contact with the headquarters, and even the mechas that went to support it did not respond. Satellite maps show that the Beast Tide has invaded the hinterland of the 4th line of defense islands. We must stop the monsters from advancing further. Third, for the special guest member of this meeting, Crossing Cheyenne, his status and identity in the Watcher Alliance must be clarified. Does anyone have any questions? Although Yuan Zhen's tone was so easygoing, what she said made everyone present feel like a mountain was pressing on their chests. Even though they had just won a glorious victory, the whole world was still sliding into a quagmire. Then let's start the discussion from the first thing. Yuan Zhen sat back in his chair, waiting for the first person to express his opinion. But the heavy atmosphere made the meeting as quiet as a funeral. Then let me go first. General Chen broke the silence first. I think the source of this matter should be traced back to me, because it was me who ordered Bai Ying, the Iron Pilot of the Black Sky Legion, to drive Crossing Shine to the Silent Cemetery to upgrade the Mecha. As soon as these words came out, all eyes present turned to General Chen. I didn't expect Bai Ying to conflict with the members of the Silent Cemetery. In fact, before the Beast Tide appeared, Bai Ying and Crossing Shine had already caused great damage to the Silent Cemetery. Cough. Interrupt. Yuan Zhen coughed twice quickly. In fact, the main responsibility for the conflict between the two parties should be borne by Dr. Chris of our Omega. As for Gao Xianxi, Poison Scorpion and others involved, they have been detained. We will talk about this matter later, or we will start directly from the appearance of the monster. Then let the parties involved tell the story. General Chen tacitly brought the topic back on track. As soon as he finished speaking, Yu Zhao felt that everyone's eyes were on him. I agree. Crossing Shine's answer made the people present even more curious about him. Just when everyone thought that Crossing Shine would tell the whole story, a holographic communication window suddenly appeared above the long table. Hello. It was the confused Bai Ying who spoke. Bai Ying, you are the person involved. We want to hear what you encountered before the truth arrived at the battlefield. Let's start directly from the part where the monster appeared. Although it was Crossing Shine who pulled Bai Ying into the communication, it was General Chen who explained the situation. After listening to General Chen's words, Bai Ying realized that he was caught by Crossing Shine to give an explanation. The first thing we encountered was a kind of creature that we had never seen before. I don't know what to call it. It was something between a monster and a mecha. Bai Ying still gets goosebumps when he recalls those scenes now. Their way of moving is similar to that of monsters, but they can use the abilities of mechas. Zizzy. In order to make the people present understand Bai Ying's narration more intuitively, Yu Zhao directly played the battle scenes he recorded in the form of a projection. When the blue eagle in the picture made a distorted roar and rushed towards the Xingqian driven by Bai Ying at an exaggerated speed, all the viewers gasped. My scan data shows that it has the characteristics of both the second generation Mecha Blue Eagle and the first type monster Demon Shark. Other enemy units also have multiple identification information. Yu Zhao supplemented the situation at that time. Monster Mecha. This time it was Yuan Zhen who spoke, and her expression had become quite serious. The second generation mechas that appeared in the picture were all buried in the boundless sea. Because of the giant beast Leviathan, the Alliance has not been able to recover the wreckage of these mechas. If the monster can parasitize and control the mecha, then no matter the outcome of the subsequent battles, we cannot let the mecha fall into the hands of the monster. The chief technology officer of the war factory said in a firm tone. You said it easily, and no matter the outcome, if the monster knocks down the mecha, how can it be recovered? The commander of the Red Fortress personally participated in this joint operation. He was one of the few people who actually sat in the conference room. Although his tone was not pleasant, everyone was used to it. The people of the Chalice Federation were naturally hot-tempered and full of martial virtues. Others kept cats and dogs as pets, but they liked to keep brown bears. The ultimate goal is to prevent the monsters from getting the mecha. Recycling is not the only means. Yuan Zhen's sky blue eyes were as cold as ice and snow at this moment. If it can't be recycled, then self-destruct. Chapter 44. Disaster of the Endless Sea. Yu Zhao almost shuddered when he heard the word self-destruct. However, he still restrained his movements very well. The commander of the Red Fortress looked very ugly, and anyone could see that he was extremely dissatisfied with Yuan Zhen's proposal. Unfortunately, he couldn't think of any better way to refute the other party, so he could only hold his breath and sit on the chair and stare at Yuan Zhen. Don't be nervous, everyone. Self-destruction is just a simple and crude way, but you can't self-destruct just because you can't win. Yuan Zhen changed the subject. Each mecha is an extremely valuable combat power. Unless it is certain that the monster will take away the mecha, you should always give priority to the recycling plan. Yuan Zhen's words made everyone feel relieved. Go on, baying. After repelling the monster Mecha, I activated the escape pod and left crossing Cheyenne. The follow-up was about encountering the Black Sky transport ship. Baying didn't know how much time he had missed. That's exactly the time when the truth arrived at the battlefield. Yuan Zhen continued, we also received your signal when you ejected in the escape pod. It seems that the timeline has been completed. Thank you for your description, Baying. Baying nodded and hung up the communication window. I'm a member of Omega and the first person to arrive at the battlefield, so I will make a few guesses. Yuan Zhen knew that the leader of this meeting could only be herself, so she simply threw out her guess. Before this operation, humans have not been able to fully explore the ocean, so when monsters emerged from the sea, we could not rule out the possibility that they were native creatures. Yuan Zhen casually projected the digital model he had built to the center of the long table. But after discovering a space rift that looks like a wormhole, we have reason to suspect that the monsters are actually alien creatures, and they all emerged from wormholes like this. I agree with you. The Deputy Minister of the Joint Theater Defense Department raised his hand in agreement. We have collected the locations where all monsters were first discovered in the past 10 years and marked their movement paths on the map. It turns out that the current location of Leviathan is the intersection of all monster movement paths. That is most likely the location of the original wormhole. Commander Kang He Langayan, who personally experienced the disaster of the Infinite Sea, said, Leviathan had not yet appeared, and we encountered an astonishing number of beasts. This is related to another conjecture of mine. Yuan Zhen was very happy that everyone participated in the discussion. For some reason, the initial size of the wormhole is limited, and at most it can only allow level 4 monsters to pass through. But as the wormhole absorbs more and more energy, the hole will become larger and larger, and eventually become large enough for a monster of Leviathan's level to pass through. If everything is really as you said, then why would the monster open a new wormhole in the Silent Cemetery to teleport the monster? Wouldn't it be better to use the one under Leviathan directly? That one is already big enough, right? The Deputy Secretary General of the Unified Front followed Yuan Zhen's thoughts and found the contradiction. The scene fell into silence for a while, and everyone was thinking about this question. Drive Yuan, I didn't experience this operation in person, but I think it should be the space-based energy weapon that destroyed the wormhole in the end, right? General Chen broke the silence again. Yes, and this attack confirmed that the wormhole will reverse its unidirectionality when it collapses, and the size of the wormhole will affect its collapse speed. Yuan Zhen explained the situation in detail. That makes sense. General Chen nodded slowly. After Leviathan appeared, the Special Operations Force at that time guessed that its weakness might be under the sea surface, and dispatched a group of nuclear submarines equipped with nuclear warheads. They believed that, as long as they dived deep enough, they could minimize the damage caused by the nuclear bomb. Later, the impact rose from the bottom of the sea, burying nearly 99% of the people on Leviathan. The head of the Special Operations Force continued General Chen's words. He was just a newcomer who had just emerged, and was only qualified to wait for the results on land. But he knew that the people who drove these submarines never thought they could come back alive. Since that battle, the Special Operations Force has become the most marginal department of the Watcher Alliance, and his immediate superior also committed suicide because of a huge sense of guilt. So the original wormhole is likely to have been destroyed at that time, but we didn't expect Leviathan to be able to breed monsters by itself. Its fate. The commander of Kang He Langayan was a little disappointed. Because the people present didn't know until today that humans were not completely defeated in that battle. They destroyed the channel through which the monsters invaded the planet, but they failed to defeat Leviathan. Then, does anyone know why the wormhole appeared again? The commander of the Golden Rainforest, who had been silent, spoke up. He was the shortest of all the Legion commanders. This question once again stumped everyone present. I do have a guess. Yuan Zhen spoke as expected. The place where Leviathan appeared is in the center of the boundless sea, where there is the deepest trench on this planet. From the Silent Cemetery Pier, drive 10 nautical miles east. There is also a bottomless trench there. General Chen was also familiar with the terrain near the Silent Cemetery. After all, it once belonged to the Black Sky Legion. Although the sample size is insufficient, we can temporarily assume that a necessary condition for the appearance of a wormhole is a deep enough trench. No, this is just a superficial phenomenon, not the root cause. Yuan Zhen interrupted his train of thought halfway through. Let Omega investigate the reasons behind this, but we can temporarily regard the deep trench as a necessary condition. It is necessary for us to monitor trenches that exceed a certain depth. The Deputy Secretary General made a prompt decision. As long as we can establish a complete surveillance network, we can focus on defending against Leviathan, so that everyone will be under much less pressure. Does anyone have any details to add? Yuan Zhen nodded. If not, we will do as the Secretary General said, and shift the focus of future operations to monitoring wormholes and defending against Leviathan. I object. The commander of the Red Legion Fortress said in a loud voice. How long can we defend? Leviathan can already launch long-range attacks from the air. It is now a living wormhole. If we just passively defend, who knows how long we can last? I object. 2. The commander of Kanghae Langayan raised his hand. Leviathan's attacks are becoming more and more frequent and more intense. Just like this attack, even though the Alliance had been warned of the beast tide in advance, the United Front Corps was still defeated because there was no one to support it at the time. It's easy for you to oppose. The Deputy Secretary General's face was quite ugly. Since the disaster of the Endless Sea, the Alliance has not been able to catch its breath until now. Funding, manpower, and public opinion control, each of which requires us to spend time to rebuild. Defense is already the limit of what we can do. Although the Deputy Secretary General's words were unpleasant, every word was true. The entire conference hall fell into silence again, until Yuan Zhen spoke up to break the silence. If our mechas were as powerful as Xingqian, then perhaps all your concerns would be resolved. Chapter 45 Secondary Support. Crossing Shan, who was almost forgotten by everyone, once again successfully attracted the attention of the audience. Everyone present knew the terrifying strength that Crossing Shan showed in this battle. It was obvious that Yuan Zhen was very interested in Crossing Shan and even thought that the breakthrough point of all this was Crossing Shan. I will answer your questions when the agenda enters the third stage. This was the only answer Yuzhiro could think of at the moment. But Yuan Zhen had achieved his goal, to link Crossing Shan with the fate of the Alliance, so that everyone would pay more attention to him. This was not a good thing for Yuzhiro. The more others paid attention to him, the more curious and expectant they were about him. At that time, this seemingly fair dialogue would likely become a one-sided question and answer or even an interrogation, forcing Yuzhiro to explain many unnecessary details. The more you talk, the easier it is to make mistakes. Since Crossing Shan has said so, let's move on to the next topic. Yuan Zhen did not continue to press and ask, how can we stop the beast tide in the fourth line of Death and Silence from continuing to advance? How else can we stop it? We have to fight when we have to. The commander of the Red Fortress gave the first answer. Things are not as simple as you think. The one who spoke this time was the commander of the Golden Gate Legion who attended the meeting via holographic image. We, already have troops stationed in Zori and Aoquen, and we have 3 mechas stationed in the United Front Legion as permanent support. But now both the mechas and ground troops have lost contact with us. That's because your mechas and ground troops are too weak. The commander of the Scarlet Fortress sneered. Chalice's Legion has never let any monster enter the city and wreak havoc, and our people are proud of it. Because you only need to guard your own door. The commander of the Golden Gate was not to be outdone. Hein's allies are all over the world, and we have the mission to provide help and protection to these countries. Of course you can't use your strength if you stretch your hands too far. You have put your troops in other people's homes. Is this protection? What's more, this is paid aid. I think Hein has already treated Mecha support as a business to make a fortune. The commander of the Scarlet Fortress even stood up from his seat. Quiet. This is the Watcher Alliance, not the World Council. Yuan Zhen slapped the long table, changing his casual look. We have only one enemy, the monster. The 2 Legion commanders, who were on the verge of a fight, sat back in their chairs and turned their eyes away. Colonel Vitali, I must tell you that the impact on the fourth line of Death and Silence is more serious than you think. There are 7 level 4 monsters alone, and the first batch of reinforcement sent by the Alliance lost contact shortly after arriving at the battlefield. The Deputy Minister of the Joint Theater Defense Department said, because the Alliance has begun to consider whether to use strategic weapons to stop this beast tide. How many troops are there in the first batch of reinforcement? Vitaly of the Red Fortress slowed down his tone. 9 mechas, 3 special operations groups, the Zyanga Dragon boat, a Legion-class transport ship, and 2 Vanguard-class transport ships. As a member of the Integration Center, the Deputy Secretary General knew all this information clearly. All lost contact. After hearing the size of the reinforcement, Vitaly finally realized the seriousness of the matter. But the satellite can still see the situation, right? Seeing that Vitaly stopped talking, the commander of the Golden Gate took the first word. It's limited to the extent of seeing. There is something in the fourth line of defense islands that can interfere with the image signal. I guess the loss of contact between the troops is also related to this thing. The Deputy Secretary General said slowly. Another news is that the speed of the beast tide has obviously slowed down at the entrance of the Black Rock Canyon. We suspect that the beast tide has encountered obstacles there. It seems that the Alliance's troops have not been completely wiped out. The commander of the Golden Gate breathed a sigh of relief. Then we can temporarily put aside the option of using strategic weapons. Using strategic weapons to eliminate the beast tide is the Alliance's trump card, but the violent catalytic reaction caused by the beast blood will also cause irreversible and destructive damage to the land. Once the strategic weapons are activated, it is equivalent to humans announcing that this land will be removed from the map of civilization. Then what else is there to discuss? Isn't the establishment of the Watcher Alliance to help each other and fight the enemy together? Vitaly spoke again. We can't give up on them. We must send out a second support. I agree. The commander of the Golden Gate was the first to raise his hand in agreement. I agree. We can't just let it go. Our Mecha Ranger is still in the first batch of support teams. The commander of the Golden Rainforest also raised his hand in agreement. I agree. The Red Hurricane is the main battle Mecha of the Black Sky. It won't disappear just like that. This time it was General Chen who agreed. I agree. The other Legion commanders also raised their hands. It seems that we don't need to vote. Yuan Zhen smiled and glanced at everyone who raised their hands. But please allow me to remind everyone that the statistics of 7 level 4 monsters are the report before the United Front Legion was defeated. Now it has been almost 2 days since the beast tide landed. I can't guarantee that this information is still accurate. After all, every level 4 monster that has appeared has brought devastating blows to humans. Once these intelligent monsters appear in groups, the risk factor will increase exponentially. The so-called inaccurate intelligence can only occur in 2 situations. First, the number of monsters has decreased under the resistance of the Watcher Alliance. Second, more monsters have landed on the mainland. Yuan Zhen's reminder made many people's faces appear gloomy, because most people are more inclined to the second situation. But I believe that, if Crossing Shine can participate in this operation, our chances of winning will be much higher. Yuan Zhen changed the subject and brought the topic back to Crossing Shine. If there are no details that need to be added, then we will move on to the last topic and clarify Crossing Shine's position and identity in the Watcher Alliance. All eyes finally fell on Crossing Shine at the end of the long table. Even if people haven't spoken yet, Yuziro can read curiosity and desire from their burning eyes. Curious about his existence, longing for his power. But everyone present knew that at this time, it was best for a professional counterpart to ask the first question. And now, the person who can be called a walking authority is sitting on the other side of the long table, echoing Crossing Shine. Yuziro can already feel the changes hidden in the subtle atmosphere. This conversation has turned into an interrogation. Then, the first question. Yuan Zhen put on a relaxed smile and looked at Crossing Shine. Who are you? Chapter 46 Backup Plan. I'm Crossing Shine. Yuziro didn't hesitate at all. Who are you? Yuan Zhen narrowed his eyes. I'm Crossing Shine. Yuziro answered at the same speed as the first time. Who are you? Yuan Zhen suddenly slammed the table and stood up, questioning Crossing Shine in a nearly roaring voice. Everyone present was startled by Yuan Zhen's sudden action. They didn't understand why Yuan Zhen suddenly got angry. I'm Crossing Shine. Yuzao still repeated the same answer in the same tone and at the same speed. The huge conference hall fell into a dead silence under the confrontation between one person and one machine. In this silent confrontation, Crossing Shine's body never moved. Half a minute later, Yuan Zhen let out a long breath, put on that relaxed face again, and fell into the seat. And where Yuan Zhen couldn't see, Yuzao himself also silently breathed a sigh of relief. As he expected, this has become an interrogation. Yuzao's goal was very clear. He wanted the Alliance to define him as an individual who can think independently, but is not complete enough during this meeting. The reason for defining him like this was to make them regard Crossing Shine as a life that could have an equal dialogue with humans, but not to make them feel that Crossing Shine was beyond human control and was a potential threat. However, Yuzao had another consideration. He suspected that Omega was developing a kind of machine soul technology. Once Yuzao revealed that he was no different from humans, Crossing Shine would most likely be forcibly abducted by Omega. It was very simple to prove that Crossing Shine could think independently. Yuzao himself was a human being, and this was a very natural thing. But it was a bit difficult to prove that Crossing Shine was not a complete individual. Because the biggest difference between artificial intelligence and humans is not intelligence, or even independent thinking, but emotion. The reason why machines make people feel cold is that they cannot empathize with human joys, sorrows, anger, and happiness, and thus cannot truly establish the so-called connection with humans. Yuzao had to side Yuan Zhen's meticulous mind as the founder of Omega. When the two met for the first time, Yuan Zhen used the excuse of joking to test Crossing Shine's cognition of human social relationships. Whether it is family, love, or friendship, these relationships are all based on emotions. If Crossing Shine cannot perceive emotions, then he cannot be considered a complete independent individual in the eyes of humans. Of course, the standard of this independent individual is based on humans as a reference template. And in this seemingly absurd question and answer just now, Yuan Zhen still followed this basic logic to test Yuzao. People have emotions, but machines only talk about logic. Who are you? Is a very simple question that both humans and machines can answer. But when this simple question is repeated 2 or 3 times, or even expressed in different tones, the gap between humans and machines will be reflected. Humans will subconsciously look for abnormalities. Why did she ask me so many times? Did I answer wrong? Or did she not hear clearly? Why was she angry? Was she questioning me? Therefore, the answers given by people may show changes in words, tone, speed, expression, and movements. For example, I'm Crossing Shine. Are you deaf? I am Crossing Shine. But for machines, no matter what the tone and demeanor of the questioner is, as long as the question is logical, the machine will only give the same answer in a fixed format without any emotion. Of course, those pseudo-intellectual systems designed to be bionic are excluded. Forgive my impoliteness just now. Yuan Zhen returned to his usual casual look. Can you introduce yourself? My name is Crossing Shine, number T001, Mecha model. First generation nuclear powered armor, affiliated to the Watcher Alliance Black Sky Corps. Factory date, March 14th, the first year of Cheyenne Key. Driver, Beiying. Yuzao gave a standard system answer. Then do you know where your consciousness was born? Yuan Zhen changed his mind. My consciousness was born in the Lianshan system. Yuzao said the first answer he had prepared long ago. Although Crossing Shine, as the first generation of Mecha, is not equipped with an intelligent system, it still has a basic operating system. If a machine has self-awareness, then the most logical explanation is that it evolved from the system. After hearing Crossing Shine's answer, most people present showed an expected expression, and even Yuan Zhen smiled. Then for Yuzao, the most troublesome problem has been solved. But he was wrong. You are lying. Yuan Zhen said to Crossing Shine with a smile. As soon as these words came out, the originally relaxed atmosphere immediately became tense. I'm not lying. Yuzao suppressed the shock in his heart and refuted it in a calm tone. I'm your designer. 90% of the code of the Lianshan system was written by me personally, and the remaining 10% was written by others, while I watched them write it. Yuan Zhen's sky blue eyes seemed to see through Crossing Shine. In order to reduce the mental burden of the driver and the Mecha during neural synchronization, I deliberately optimized all the self-running codes in Lianshan to the simplest, making it an operating system with the least resources and the fastest response speed. Therefore, the Lianshan system has no possibility of self-evolution. It is a pure operating system, and even the automatic driving function cannot run. Yuzao's heart sank. Although most of the people present did not quite understand the principles behind Yuan Zhen's words, this did not prevent them from unconditionally believing in the conclusion drawn by Yuan Zhen, the walking authority. At this moment, all eyes and pressure came to Crossing Cheyenne. That kind of gaze was no longer curiosity and expectation, but caution and vigilance, as if people had already determined that there was a malicious soul hidden in Crossing Cheyenne's Mecha. An irresistible impulse rose from Yuzao's heart and gradually spread to his mind. He really wanted to split the hangar with an axe, then carry the axe to the front of the Dawn building, and give everyone a big middle finger. I won't pretend anymore. I'm going to show my cards. I've traveled through time and space into a Mecha, so you can do whatever you want to me. Either we can be brothers and chop monsters together, or I'll chop both you and the monsters together. But in the end, Yuzao threw this idea out of his mind. This kind of self-destruction would do him no good in a turbulent world. So he could only come up with the second set of answers he had prepared. I didn't evolve from the system. Chapter 47 Neural Residual Sound. This sentence sounds just like self-destruction. Many people present frowned. In their eyes, Crossing Cheyenne had become a bomb that could explode at any time. All my judgments and actions are based on the neural pulse signals of the first pilot Yanfei, and the signals come from the neural resonance processing area in the Lianshan system. Yuzao said the second half of the sentence. Yuan Zhen narrowed his eyes and put away his relaxed smile. And Yuan Zhen's reaction also confirmed that Yuzao's guess was right. Omega was indeed developing machine soul-like technology. As a machine soul, Yuzao inherited all the memories in Crossing Cheyenne's data storage library when he just crossed over to Crossing Cheyenne's body. It was also at that time that Yuzao discovered that there were some abnormalities in this first generation Mecha. All first generation mechas are driven by two people. Single pilot technology was not put into use on very few bodies until the third generation Mecha came out. Before that, only some pilots with extremely strong mental power would control the Mecha alone under special circumstances. But since Yuzao crossed over, there was only one control position in Crossing Cheyenne's cockpit. But whether in Crossing Cheyenne's memory or in the official public information, Crossing Cheyenne's first driver has always been two, Chen Weimin and Yanfei. In the last battle before Crossing Cheyenne retired, the driver Yanfei died, and in the end, only Chen Weimin controlled the Mecha and walked back to the base alive. Since then, Crossing Cheyenne has been sent to the war factory for repair and officially retired. Yuzao has reason to suspect that in the last repair, Omega should have conducted and disclosed experiments and modifications on Crossing Cheyenne's body. In addition to the previous encounter with the Mecha Scorpion, that only requires one person to drive in the silent cemetery, and the broken machine soul found at the bottom of the Scorpion system, Yuzao is almost certain that the machine soul technology that Omega is studying must be inseparable from human consciousness. So Yuzao took a gamble and used the deceased driver Yanfei as a smoke bomb to induce Yuan Zhen to think of Crossing Cheyenne in the direction of the machine soul. Although this sounds more unreliable than system evolution, at least Omega has also studied the machine soul, which is barely within the scope of human cognition. As long as it is within the acceptable range for humans, Crossing Cheyenne will not be too threatening in the eyes of everyone. Your statement needs to be verified. Yuan Zhen realized that this was a statement that could not be verified now, not to mention that the research on the machine soul was an Omega secret and could not be said in front of so many people. As for the other people present, except for the chief technical officer of the war factory who had a serious expression, most of the others showed confusion and surprise. I don't understand the technical issues, but I think I can still say a few words about Crossing Cheyenne's affairs. General Chen slowly got up from his seat and broke the stiff situation. As one of the first pilots of Crossing Cheyenne, many people think that I can drive the Mecha back to the base alone because my mental strength is higher than that of ordinary people. But this is not the case. After my partner and my best friend Yan Fei died, I could still feel his presence in the neural synchronization. It was not until I drove Crossing Cheyenne back to the base and got off the control seat that this feeling gradually disappeared. It is also for this reason that I no longer drive mechas, and I don't want to see Crossing Cheyenne on the battlefield again. General Chen's tone was as calm as a windless lake, as if these things had happened centuries ago. But things didn't develop as I wished. By chance, Crossing Cheyenne became a mecha that didn't need a driver to operate it. General Chen continued, I don't know the reason, but he protected everyone at the most critical moment of the Black Sky and played a vital role in the joint operation in the Silent Cemetery. I think this is beyond doubt. No matter how everyone views Crossing Cheyenne, at least in my eyes, he is my comrade in arms, a fearless warrior, and an indispensable member of the Black Sky. After saying this, General Chen nodded slightly to Crossing Cheyenne and then sat back in his chair. I agree with General Chen. Vitaly was the first to speak. He was one of the few commanders who would personally drive a mecha into battle. I was behind Crossing Cheyenne when he charged the behemoth. I could feel his spirit of not fearing death. He is as brave as us Chalice people. I agree too. The commander of Kanghae Langayan followed closely. From the performance of the joint operations, Crossing Cheyenne is indeed worthy of General Chen's evaluation, and I believe in General Chen's judgment. Although I don't really believe what you said, I don't mind having another powerful ally. The commander of the Golden Gate looked at Crossing Cheyenne warily and raised his hand. The pilots of our legion all have a high opinion of Crossing Cheyenne, and this alone is enough. The commander of the Golden Rainforest raised his hand above his head. I agree. Most commanders also raised their hands to express their opinions. Under the leadership of General Chen, the attitude of the entire conference hall towards Crossing Cheyenne reversed. It seems that the commanders have made a decision. Yuan Zhen smiled and shrugged, giving up the idea of continuing to question Crossing Cheyenne. Since everyone says so, let's put the matter of confirming Crossing Cheyenne's identity aside for now, and first solve Crossing Cheyenne's position in the alliance. My suggestion is to incorporate Crossing Cheyenne into a special combat unit under unified command and directly obey the headquarters. The Deputy Secretary General said first. Xingshan's strength is obvious to all. Joining the unified command will make it more convenient for the headquarters to dispatch support according to the situation and maximize his strength. Mr. Deputy Secretary General, according to the division of the alliance, our legions are all under your management. As the command organization, you should leave all the fighting to us. The commander of the Golden Gate crossed his arms and said in a semi-joking tone, no matter what, Xingshan is a mecha, and the mecha is of course managed by the Mobile Armored Corps. Then according to General Bruno, with so many legions, who should manage Xingshan? The Deputy Secretary General asked back, leaning forward. Whoever needs it most will be in charge. Bruno's tone gradually became tough. It seems that General Bruno has taken the initiative to give up the management of Xingshan. After all, the combat effectiveness of the Golden Gate Legion is the strongest in the alliance. The Deputy Secretary General was not to be outdone. Then how to judge which legion is worse off? The commander of the Golden Rainforest had a face full of laughter. If we talk about misery, the defeated United Front must be the worst, and they need Crossing Cheyenne the most. Just as everyone was arguing, Crossing Cheyenne, who was sitting at the end of the long table, finally spoke. Everyone, I'm not a weapon, nor an object. I think I have a say in this matter. As soon as the voice fell, everyone closed their mouths tacitly and turned their eyes to the focus of their discussion. I want to continue to stay in the Black Sky. Chapter 48 Pre-War Preparations. Hearing Crossing Cheyenne's words, General Chen smiled knowingly. As General Chen said before, I don't want to be treated as a war machine. Crossing Cheyenne's tone was neither full of emotion nor emotionless. There are still many things I can't understand, but I'm constantly learning. I hope you can treat me as an ordinary person. Although I'm different from you in body structure and behavioral logic, I believe that one day we can understand each other and become true friends. Yu Zhao could feel that the moment he finished speaking, the atmosphere in the entire conference hall relaxed. No one quarreled over the ownership of Crossing Cheyenne anymore. If there is no objection, then I assume that everyone respects Crossing Cheyenne's decision. You and Zen spoke at the right time. Then I declare that Crossing Cheyenne still belongs to the Watcher Alliance's Black Sky Corps and acts as a mobile army unit. And in view of the special nature of Crossing Cheyenne's autonomous actions, he will also be his own pilot and enjoy all the rights and obligations of a pilot. When Yuan Zhen finished the last word, Yu Zhao finally felt relieved. He has temporarily resolved the crisis about his identity and initially established his position in the Watcher Alliance. Of course, establishing a position does not mean that everyone's attitude will change immediately. It still requires Yu Zhao's long-term efforts to eliminate the gap. Now that the problem of Crossing Cheyenne has been solved, we should formulate a battle plan for the fourth line of defense islands. 3 hours later. In the blue sky, a black transport ship is passing through the dreamy clouds, like a giant whale swimming in the ocean. It is now 11:26 in the morning, and there are less than 24 hours left before the next battle. The transport ship will arrive at the Black Sky base in an hour, and Crossing Cheyenne is browsing the mall page in the evolution system. After this large-scale joint operation, Yu Zhao's available evolution points have reached 46,000 points. Killing level 3 monsters in the Beast Tide provides 16,000 points. Independently killing level 4 monsters Thunder provides 20,000 points, and destroying unknown monster parts provides 10,000 points. Among them, Yu Zhao is most concerned about destroying unknown monster parts. The unknown beast obviously refers to the thing that failed to get out of the wormhole, but Yu Zhao didn't expect that just destroying the tentacles of the beast would directly gain evolution points. However, the system's wording and this special reward mechanism also prove another thing. The beast is not dead. Even if Yu Zhao had done everything he could at the time, that axe couldn't kill the beast. Combining the previous battle between Crossing Cheyenne and Zunlei, Yu Zhao roughly evaluated his current strength. It can easily crush level 3 monsters, and it has a chance to win against a single level 4 monster, but it can't face multiple level 4 monsters or higher monsters at the same time. Yu Zhao muttered to himself in the consciousness space while browsing the goods in the mall. The Beast Tide of the Fourth Line Islands contains a large number of level 4 monsters. Although it is a joint operation, Yu Zhao doesn't want to leave his life and death to his teammates. So he is prepared to consider the worst case scenario and assume that he will face multiple level 4 monsters at the same time. There are already a lot of equipment modules on the machine, but the weight of the machine has also increased. The chemical missiles and energy corrosion cannons have some overlap in functionality, and the damage they cause to level 4 monsters is also limited. Yu Zhao hesitated for a while and decided to throw the 2 equipment modules into the warehouse and buy a new one from the mall. Product name, Chenglan Gorilla Turret Group. Product description, the heavy turret group relying on the power reactor is composed of 8 heavy machine guns, divided into 2 rows, 4 in each row. The special ammunition chain can give ordinary metal bullets an armor-piercing effect, which can cause effective damage to level 4 monsters. Note, the Chenglan Gorilla Turret Group is mounted on a ring chain device and can move freely 360 degrees in the horizontal direction, but its vertical movement is very limited. Please pay attention to adjust the body posture to hit the target price. 15,000 buy. It can give bullets an armor-piercing effect without consumption, and its lethality is enough to cause effective damage to level 4 monsters. It is simply the king of cost effectiveness. You have to know that this is a machine gun. Its firing rate and ammunition volume are much higher than those large caliber energy weapons. And isn't the purpose of manufacturing large caliber energy weapons to deal with the more defensive level 4 monsters? Yu Zhao added it to the shopping cart without hesitation. The remaining 2 equipment modules are the giant claw thermal cannon and the scorpion tail combined giant metal chain sword. Crossing Cheyenne is now focusing on close combat. When holding an axe, he has no time to use the thermal cannon. Besides, the thermal cannon is not very effective against level 4 monsters. The scorpion tail chainsword is very convenient to use, and the toughness of the giant metal can also cope with the power of level 4 monsters. Yu Zhao decided to remove the giant claw thermal cannon from his body, but still keep the scorpion tail chainsword. However, removing the thermal cannon means that Crossing Cheyenne has lost any close combat means, except the giant axe, so he must find a replacement. Product name, Powerful Attack Impact Gloves. Product description: a giant glove made of pure giant force metal, with a special energy converter on the back of the glove, which can store the waste energy generated by the power furnace, and achieve a 100% energy conversion rate. Note: the powerful attack impact gloves are divided into two modes. Absorption and release. In absorption mode, using the glove to resist physical attacks can absorb 50% of the kinetic energy and store it in the energy converter. In release mode, each attack of the glove will be accompanied by an energy shock, and the power of the energy shock depends on the accumulated energy value price. 15,000 buy. This glove can even form a linkage with the black armor on Crossing Shine's body, so that the energy absorbed by the black armor each time can also be accumulated in the glove. The equipment for close combat and long-range combat has been selected, and the performance of the fuselage must also be optimized. Product name: Inspirin Elastic Muscle Unit. Product description: a special bionic muscle module, extremely light, can change shape with the increase or decrease of pressure, and can withstand external forces 100 times its own mass. Note: the extensibility and plasticity of the Inspirin Elastic Muscle Unit are very high, which can help the body skeleton share most of the external force impact and allow the Mecha to make many large movements. Price: 12,000 buy. A melee mecha like Xingshan needs to balance strength and agility. Just replacing this module can reduce the weight of the body by another 1,000 tons, and it can also allow Xingshan to make more tricky moves. After Yuziro picked out the equipment he liked, the transport ship also arrived above the dark sky. Exchange successful. Thank you for your patronage. The system will complete the delivery within 10 minutes. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49. Welcome back. Bang, bang, bang. When the transport ship docked on the huge landing platform under the black sky, 3 sonic booms also sounded in the sky. Then, under the witness of everyone, Crossing Shine walked out of the temporary hangar and opened his arms to the sky. The next second, 3 black cubes penetrated the clouds and turned into countless insect-like fragments in midair, falling straight to where Crossing Shine was standing. But Crossing Shine's abdomen, arms and the body under the armor were all covered by black insect swarms, and 3 very different equipment modules were quickly formed. At the same time, the old equipment that was replaced also turned into a black mist and drilled into Crossing Shine's power furnace. Although many people have seen the first time Crossing Shine absorbed the power furnace, they were still surprised at this moment. So these black things are actually summoned by you, right? Beiying controlled the mecha and walked to Crossing Shine's side, including the power furnace on your chest. Yes, Yuziro had actually prepared a set of rhetoric about the evolution system. After all, this pitfall thing always falls from the sky, and he can't hide it. He can't hide it every time he upgrades. Moreover, he had already devoured 2 mechas in front of everyone in the last battle, and used all kinds of combat skills and machine soul skills. He believed that these issues should have been raised at the post-war meeting, but General Chen's speech temporarily postponed many topics related to Crossing Shine. In the face of a huge crisis, most people are willing to accept Crossing Shine first, rather than digging into the root of the matter. However, Yuziro himself knew that once these crises were resolved, all discussions about Crossing Shine would be put on the long table again, and whether he would be sent to the Omega Research Complex was also unknown. But by then, Yuziro estimated that he would have evolved to the point where he could bargain with the Alliance. What are these things? Why can you summon them? Beiying could hardly suppress her curiosity, but fortunately she did not forget to switch the conversation to a private channel. Secret. Yuziro hesitated for a moment and decided not to tell the other party the truth. Sometimes knowing too much is not a good thing, especially about Yuziro. Through the heavy armor, Yuziro could feel the anger in Beiying's eyes. You haven't told me the information of your mecha yet. Yuziro quickly changed the subject, and he really couldn't find the information of Beiying's experimental mecha in the public database. Beiying didn't answer immediately, but turned around and squinted his eyes and stared at Crossing Shine. After a long silence, he threw out 2 words. Secret. Is it really so stingy? Yuziro took a deep breath in his consciousness space. His face flushed. Beiying looked satisfied and walked to the hangar before crossing Xian. Half an hour later, General Chen summoned all members of the base to the central square inside the high wall. Standing behind General Chen was the majestic Mecha crossing Xian, which was 85 meters tall. Comrades in arms, I called everyone here today to announce 2 things. The first thing, I believe many people have heard the full broadcast of the Alliance. Our Legion officially welcomed the return of an old friend today, crossing Xian. Although Yuziro felt that he was indescribably embarrassed at the moment, in order to cooperate with General Chen's speech, he still waved to the people in the square without expectation. But what Yuziro didn't expect was that he was greeted with warm cheers and applause. He thought that people would be a little scared when they saw a mecha that could move without a driver, but he didn't expect that everyone would accept him easily. I believe many people already know that this friend who has been with everyone since the establishment of the Black Sky has now become aware of himself. Whether it is the great contributions he made 10 years ago, or the fact that he has stepped forward to protect the Black Sky now, Crossing Xian has always stood with us. So I declare that Crossing Xian officially joins the Black Sky Mobile Armor Corps as an Iron Pilot, and equally enjoys all the rights and obligations that an Iron Pilot should have. From now on, he is no longer a mecha, but a comrade in arms and Iron Pilot who fights side by side with us. People cheered for Crossing Xian, and thunderous applause resounded throughout the square. It was not until then that Yuziro finally reacted and smiled knowingly. Why should these people who have spent 10 years with Crossing Xian be afraid of him? General Chen waited patiently for the crowd to release their enthusiasm, and then he stretched out his hand to signal everyone to be quiet. The second thing is that Red Hurricane has lost contact with us. The smiles on people's faces gradually disappeared. Not only Red Hurricane, all the troops in the first batch of support cannot get in touch, and any means cannot detect the battle situation in the 4th line of defense islands. Even the satellite vision is interfered with. But there is evidence that the landing beast tide slowed down in front of the Blackstone Canyon. The Alliance believes that this is a resistance made by the troops that have lost contact with us. After discussion, the Alliance decided to send the second batch of support troops to rescue our compatriots, and Zuan's Kankiang also participated in this operation. In less than 24 hours, we will dispatch 2 mechas, a special armed regiment and 3 engineering troops to embark on the journey. I know that everyone's spirit has been in a tense state these days, and the continuous attacks have been threatening our safety. But this is the meaning of Zuan's Kankiang standing here. No matter how crazy or powerful the enemy is, we must fight until we shed our last drop of blood, until these monsters are driven out of this planet, until we protect the hundreds of millions of unarmed people behind us. For humanity. For humanity. For a moment, everyone in the square repeated in unison. 10 minutes later, Yuziro once again returned to the familiar hangar. Since he crossed into this world, this place has become his only home as Crossing Xian. Originally, there were only 3 mechas in the hangar, namely the Red Hurricane, the Raiders and Crossing Xian. But now, there is a brand new mecha on the right hand side of Crossing Xian. Beiying was sitting on the shoulder of this mecha, shaking her slender legs, staring blankly at a part on the maintenance table. What are you thinking about? Yuziro asked the dazed Beiying in the private channel, while controlling Crossing Xian to hang on the parking rack. I'm thinking about a name. Beiying did not turn around after hearing Crossing Xian's voice, and was still immersed in his own world. What name? Yuziro didn't react to what Beiying said for a moment. Papa. Beiying patted the white mecha under him. Her name. Chapter 50, Shadow of the White Moon. The elevator goes up. Beiying was wrapped in a silver functional jacket, with one hand in a loose pocket and the other hand holding a photo. Her red eyes kept staring at the electronic display on the wall, watching the floor numbers keep rising. It was already early in the morning, and except for those who needed to take turns, most of the members of the Black Sky had fallen asleep. So Beiying was the only one in the huge elevator. This was her 4th month in the Black Sky, and so far, the number of people she had talked to could be counted on 2 hands. She ate alone, trained alone, and did everything step by step by herself, and then returned to her room alone. Beiying would dream every night, dreaming of her mother, her father, and her childhood friends. There were no mechas and monsters at that time. Although her father was very busy as a soldier, Beiying was still proud of her father. My father is a soldier. No matter what danger we encounter, he will protect us. Whenever Beiying proudly introduced her father to teachers, classmates, and friends, she would receive envious eyes. Even if her father had not been with Beiying on her birthday once, Beiying would not blame her father for her small loss. Firmness and strength are her family mottos. Beiying believes that, as long as she can do these two things, she can become as good as her father. When Beiying was 9 years old, the family of 3 finally reunited on her birthday. At that time, Beiying had never felt so happy. But the next day, the apocalypse day came, and the monsters that emerged from the sea launched an attack on the country of Heen on the other side of the ocean. Since then, Beiying has never been able to talk to her father again. It was not until humans built the first Mecha Xingqian that Beiying saw on TV that her father became the first iron pilot. At that time, Beiying still regarded her father as her role model. When Beiying was 12 years old, the monster Green Rat attacked the city where she and her mother were. That night, Beiying saw her mother being crushed under the ruins by the collapsed rubble. In order to protect herself, she didn't know how many times she called her father's name, but she didn't see Xingqian until the whole city was razed to the ground. Beiying once hated him so much, hated what he said, hated what he did, hated the mecha he drove. Dingling. The elevator has arrived. The 60th floor. Beiying woke up from her memories, holding the photo of mother and daughter in her hand, walked out of the elevator silently, and came to the top floor of the Zuanskankian watchtower. The bright moon hung in the silent night sky, the bright stars twinkled in the cloudless sky, and the distant Zhenhe city was like a warm candle, burning quietly behind the Zuanskankian. But Beiying didn't expect that someone had already arrived here in the night wind. Hearing the sound, General Chen turned around and saw Beiying's face with a complicated expression. The two stood there and looked at each other. Beiying noticed that General Chen also held a photo in his hand. It was a photo of the family of 3 on her 9th birthday. You. No. Beiying's body trembled violently, and she interrupted General Chen immediately. No, I don't want to hear you talk. 7 years ago today was the day when Beiying's mother left this world. General Chen slowly closed his slightly opened lips and chose to swallow his words back into his stomach. Seeing that General Chen stopped talking, Beiying wiped his eyes vigorously, turned his back, and walked to the other side of the rooftop. The cold night wind blew through Beiying's loose coat, burying the girl's face under her white hair again for the first time. Beiying felt that the night under the dark sky was so cold. She couldn't accept that there was such a person standing behind her. A city attacked by 2 monsters, a mecha that was unable to split itself, a cold-blooded and ruthless order, and an eternally loyal soldier. He personally rescued a city from disaster, and personally pushed another city into hell. Orders that cannot be disobeyed. Obey. Absolutely loyal obedience. He is still the great soldier in Beiying's memory, or rather, Beiying should have known what he would choose. But what Beiying needs is not a soldier, but a father who keeps his word, and can truly protect him and his mother. So Beiying vented everything on him, crossing Xian, and even himself. The desire to destroy was hovering in her mind all the time. She wanted to take revenge on the High General, the shabby mecha, and the powerless self. Ironically, she failed. Under the setting sun, the old mecha fulfilled the promise that General Chen had never fulfilled, took her out of the cockpit, and rushed to the aggregation beast alone. In a trance, she seemed to find the weakness that was sealed deep in her heart in crossing Xian, the self who was crying while holding her mother's arms beside the ruins. No matter what danger we encounter, he will protect us. Beiying murmured in the wind, and warm tears flowed down her cheeks, and ripped onto the photo in her hand. I'm sorry. At some point, General Chen had walked behind Beiying. He wanted to raise his hand, to touch Beiying's shoulder several times, but in the end he chose to let Beiying cry alone. What should Beiying say? When she was recruited by her father after 7 years, she didn't know. When she drove crossing Xian synchronously for the first time, she didn't know. When she heard the order to retreat, she didn't know. Now facing her father's apology, she didn't know. In countless sleepless nights, Beiying's thoughts would go back to that night 7 years ago, thinking about what choice she would make if she were her father. This question will never have an answer, because she is not that man. She only knows that, if it was her standing in the cockpit of Crossing Shan, she would definitely run to the collapsed building without hesitation to save her mother. This small home is everything to her. If you could go back to that night 7 years ago, would you save me and my mother? Beiying lowered her head, bit her lips, and asked this question in a trembling voice. General Chen's vicissitudes of the eyes seemed to reflect all the lights of Zhenhe City, and his hand holding the photo had turned white. He opened his mouth slightly, but found that he couldn't say anything. In the end, Beiying heard only a sigh. You don't have to answer me. Beiying took a deep breath, wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes with his hands, and looked up at the night sky. The bright moonlight illuminated the two of them, and Beiying was shrouded by the tall figure of General Chen. Suddenly, Beiying put the photo back into the pocket on the chest of his coat, slowly walked out of General Chen's shadow, pressed the elevator, and prepared to leave the rooftop. I hated you, father. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.